Chapter 26:15. Boom! Wind and clouds surged between heaven and earth as killing intent filled the air. Dark clouds covered the sky, and divine light covered 3,000 miles. The two powerful experts charged at each other and began the most terrifying battle. One used the Mu-Wu Divine Book, while the other used the immemorial Divine General's Godhead. The world was overshadowed. The High Priest used the Godhead and Dragon Scepter, but his peak strength was only this much. He was even weaker. He retreated after one attack, and blood spilled across the river. The divine blood burned in the void, burning half the sky red. The ancient heavenly emperor's blood and bones were shocking, and the extreme peak mountain master coughed up blood and flew backward by relying on the Mu-Wu Divine Book. Trash. Relying on the Mu-Wu Divine Book is only this much, and you dare to call yourself a third realm expert? The ancient heavenly emperor's domineering aura soared into the sky. He stepped on the mountains and rivers, and the melody reverberated for thousands of miles. His hands formed seals, and divine light shot out. His divine consciousness swept across the universe, and the extreme peak mountain master was forced to retreat. Too powerful. The first heavenly emperor of all time. He was not an emperor, but he dared to call himself a heavenly emperor. The 5 immortal emperors were not willing to fight against him because of his terrifying bloodline. Once he entered the emperor realm, he would definitely defeat his opponent. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Dong dong dong. The extreme peak mountain master was burning with anger, and his heart was about to explode. He was injured even with the Mu-Wu Divine Book. This was a disgrace. Ancient Heavenly Emperor, you've gone too far. Today, I'll let you see the Mu-Wu Divine Book. If I don't kill you, I'm not human. Whoosh! The extreme peak mountain master bit the tip of his finger, and a drop of essence blood drew the word kill in the void. He formed a seal to activate the Mu-Wu Divine Book and put his palms together. The word kill penetrated the divine book and rushed out from the divine book. It was so powerful that nothing could stop it. Boom! The word kill contained a murderous aura that shook the souls of immortals and suppressed the souls of immortals. The immortal light tore through the dark clouds, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of the ancient heavenly emperor. Whoosh! The ancient heavenly monarch's battle robes were sharp, and he exuded the aura of a monarch, suppressing the gods and immortals. He stomped on the ground, and ancient divine runes appeared. The swastika spun rapidly, and the divine runes around him rippled like water. Bang! Boom! The two killing patterns collided, and their auras soared into the Milky Way. The hearts of the powerhouses thousands of miles away from the battlefield quickened, and they frantically fled to the periphery. Mortals were implicated mortals when they fought. Those who weren't at the big shot realm were all mortals. Those at the mystic immortal realm were all ants. Thud, 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 the two of them were pushed back by the force of the chi. Every step they took left a deep imprint on the ground. The earth cracked and the mountains and rivers were torn apart. Once a chaotic battle broke out, the immortal realm would most likely be destroyed by the group of kings. The immortal realm would end up like the ancient immortal realm, becoming a land of death. The noble plain battle began, and there was no winner. In the imperial capital of the azure reverent immortal empire, the mistress woke up. Her face radiated a divine light, and her skin was like a precious jewel. She stood at the top of the stargazing pavilion and stared into the distance. If someone with such combat prowess couldn't awaken her, that would truly be underestimating her. I didn't expect the noble battle to start so soon. Looks like the ancient celestial emperor is quite ambitious. He's using the name of the Dragon Emperor's royal family to start the noble battle. The mistress stroked the railing as her lips curled up in a smile. As the #1 beauty of the Azure Zune immortal empire, every action of hers was capable of stirring the hearts of others. Whoosh! Swish! The owner's figure flashed and teleported to the main imperial palace. At this time, Xianyuan Hongqian had already received the news. The 4 primordial kings and the flame concubine all bowed, fearing that they would neglect this special mistress. Without my order, the 5 of you are not allowed to participate in the noble battle. Cultivate well and protect Hongqian in the main imperial palace, the mistress said in a crisp voice. Yes, mistress. The 4 primordial kings and Tang Jiayao immediately bowed. Lord Pingyang nodded indifferently. He looked into the darkness and said, Marquis Pingyang, unless there's something special, you're not allowed to leave the imperial capital. Leave the noble battle to me, heaven-suppressing Marquis, Ling Yang and the others. Yes, Your Highness. Marquis Pingyang walked out of the darkness and bowed slightly without refuting. Swish! The mistress casually flashed and flew into the sky, speeding towards the southern battle zone. A few hours later, the mistress appeared in the southern sky pass. The 3 marquises and Yen Ao were all here. They didn't dare to get close to the battlefield of the ancient celestial emperor. Marquis Yen, now that the noble battle has begun, your responsibility is to guard the southern border. Don't take the initiative to attack. The other marquises are also not allowed to leave the army. Just defend and don't take the initiative to attack. Be careful of the Taijiang celestial rays. The mistress appeared in the sky above the southern sky pass and looked down. Her voice was like the sound of nature. It was extremely penetrating and resounded in every corner. Yen Ao immediately climbed to the highest peak. His marquee battle armor fluttered in the wind. He bowed and said, Yen Ao obeys, mistress. The mistress didn't say much. She immediately turned and sped towards the border battle zone. Emperor Taihao stood on a city wall not far from the border and looked at the battle zone. He had to admit that he was old. His bloodline had aged and his peak strength was no longer there. He didn't have the ability to fight even if he wanted to. Swish! The mistress landed next to Emperor Taihao and smiled. She put her hand on Emperor Taihao's shoulder and gently rubbed it. Emperor Taihao's eyes were filled with shock. Emperor Taihao's eyes were filled with shock. You're old. If you can't step on the throne, I'll help you. If you can't fight in the noble battle, I'll help you fight this one. Just watch the show this time. The mistress said crisply. Ha ha ha! Emperor Taihao laughed. His wrinkled hand caressed the jade hand on his shoulder. His face was filled with gratification. Sigh, I have to admit that I'm really old and can't fight anymore. I can't defeat any of these 3 realms. Almost all of them have entered the 4th state and are at their peak. If I were a few 100,000 years younger, I would still be able to fight this battle. Emperor Taihao was both happy and sad. His heart was beyond his prime, and he was incomparably lonely. The mistress gently hugged Emperor Taihao and said in a low voice, Your daughter will help you fight this battle. Swish! The mistress soared into the sky. Golden light paved the way, causing the mountains and rivers to tremble. Heaven and earth mourned. Dragons flew and phoenixes danced in the air. It was as if a goddess had descended. Just as the mistress came out of her seclusion, the 5 ancient godly kings of the Qing Zun immortal empire stepped out of their ancestral land. They held primordial divine weapons in their hands and soared into the sky, heading towards the battlefield. They had no choice but to come out. Otherwise, if the battlefield was brought to their ancestral land, the inheritance there would be destroyed. As for Yi Qinghan, he didn't know that the noble battle had begun. He also didn't know that the battlefield would be brought to the northern divine island. At the ultimate peak mountain, the army had migrated. Everyone had already left the mountain. The mountain range was almost flattened. The ancient heavenly emperor swept through the mountains and rivers. His fists and legs were like divine weapons. On the other hand, the ultimate peak mountain lord couldn't use the peak strength of the Mu Wu divine scripture. He could only maintain a relatively weak balance. Maybe it was because the stalemate had lasted for too long. The 2 of them fought for several years in the southern war zone. Countless innate techniques were used, shocking the heavens and earth. After a long time, the ancient heavenly emperor retracted his aura. He waved his hand and a pair of broken arms appeared. His aura towered into the sky. Baleful energy surged, seizing the fortune of heaven and earth. The arms of the Yen ancestor. The ancient heavenly emperor had refined the arms of the Yen ancestor. Everyone was shocked. They all retreated, not daring to face the ancient heavenly emperor head-on. Only this arm of the Yen ancestor's body had appeared in the world. Who would have thought that it would fall into the hands of the ancient heavenly emperor? The mistress's eyes narrowed. This broken arm was even more terrifying than a divine weapon. It was on par with a sovereign weapon, or even slightly stronger. Without a sovereign weapon, no one dared to fight it. Chapter 26:16. The pupils of the main gods and immortals shrunk. No one dared to stand in the center of the battlefield anymore. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The gods were sent flying. The name Yen Zhu had become a taboo to many people. Who would have thought that after so many years, traces of this person would appear again? Boom! Yen Zhu's hand merged with the ancient heavenly emperor's right arm. The moment the ancient heavenly emperor and Yen Zhu's hand merged, everyone's expression changed. The ancient heavenly emperor looked disdainfully at the endless peak mountain master. This big shot, who was like the sun in the sky, was now terrified. The Mu Wu Divine Book was an immemorial immortal emperor's weapon. With the endless peak mountain master's cultivation, it was impossible for him to fully awaken it. It was already good enough that he could unleash 10% of its power. However, the ancient heavenly emperor had refined Yen Zhu's hand, which meant that he had complete control over the Taigu emperor's weapon. The gap between them wasn't that big at first, but now it was like heaven and earth. The difference in combat power was 100 times. You're trash. Mu Wu Juefeng, today is the day you die. The noble battle will begin with your death. The ancient heavenly emperor roared. His voice was like a bell, and his aura was like a rainbow. He punched through mountains and rivers, causing the earth to collapse. Ah! Mu Wu Juefeng roared and spat a mouthful of blood on the Mu Wu Divine Book. The Mu Wu Divine Book shone brightly, and a strand of Emperor's aura shot up into the sky. It swept out waves of immortal aura, and the might of mountains and rivers resisted Yen Zhu's arm. Boom! Bang! The mountains and rivers were filled with sorrow, and all living things were weeping. The endless peak mountain completely collapsed and turned into nothingness. The two rays of divine light collided. The Mu Wu Divine Book was activated by Yen Zhu's arm, and it directly revived itself. Buzz! Whoosh! The stars moved, and the universe's power was disrupted by the two of them, the Mu Wu Divine Book and Yen Zhu's arm. Whoosh! Along the border, a crack was blasted open, and it rapidly extended from the north to the south, forming a vast ocean. The underground spring water was as turbid as the yellow spring. There were even corpses gushing out from the depth. Some were immortal corpses, some were Yen clan corpses, and all of them were supreme. Otherwise, their corpses wouldn't have been preserved until now. The undying immortal world was torn apart, with the ultimate peak mountain as the center, from the south to the Paragon Immortal Empire, and from the north to the northern god continent. Whoosh! The owner soared into the sky and looked down at the battlefield. He said in a low voice, "Heaven Emperor, Extreme Peak Mountain Master, you have monarch weapons in your hands. Are you planning to destroy the last immortal world? The ancient heavenly emperor has gone too far." Mu Wu Juefeng took to the air with the Mu Wu Divine Book in his hand and began to attack. His murderous aura destroyed mountains and rivers, and his divine light tore apart immortal souls. Boom boom! Bang bang bang! The two supreme beings tore apart the void, disregarding the common people, disregarding the mountains and rivers. Survival of the fittest, survival of the fittest. Many people were implicated, but there were also some who pitted the people on the periphery of the battlefield. Anguished wails filled the southern border, and when they heard it, they shed tears. The ancient celestial Tharch unleashed his power to the extreme, and he sent Wu Juefeng flying with a series of punches. He waved his hand and plucked countless stars, crushing them into a massive rock before hurtling toward Wu Juefeng. Whoosh! The Mu Wu divine book pierced through the meteorite like a sharp sword. The two of them slaughtered their way into the galaxy, breaking through the shackles and stepping into the dead star. With a single strike, they shattered the dead star, causing the galaxy to explode. Fiery light soared into the sky, shocking the entire undying immortal world. On the northern divine island, Yi Qinghan opened his eyes and looked into the void. His expression changed slightly. He didn't expect someone in the fourth form to be so terrifying. Even if he used the heaven-suppressing longsword again, he probably wouldn't be able to compete with such a powerful being. Too powerful. Human strength was incomparable. Not far away, Gu Jiutian's pupils constricted. He whispered, "It's father's aura. Who is he fighting with?" Gu Jiutian couldn't see through the void. He could only sense the ancient celestial Thearcha's aura, but couldn't sense the mountain masters. Yi Qinghan closed his eyes again and mobilized the power of human Tao in the human Tao Imperial Pagoda. He instantly filled his body and broke through the last bottleneck, stepping into the first stage of the golden immortal realm. His soul and cultivation level had both reached the same level, and the thunder tribulation was completed. Dark clouds covered the sky, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. However, compared to a noble plain battle, the commotion here couldn't attract the attention of the supreme beings. Yi Qinghan flew into the air and entered the northern sea to undergo the tribulation. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Crack crack crack, lightning flashed. The lightning at the golden immortal level was incomparably sharp and penetrative. Even the shroud was torn apart. Yi Qinghan was beaten into a bloody mess, but his powerful physical body quickly recovered. His entire body was enveloped in golden light. Whoosh! Boom! Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Yi Qinghan's eyes didn't show any fear. If he couldn't even pass the golden immortal tribulation, it would be too laughable. Bang! Yi Qinghan clenched his iron fist. He didn't use his divine weapon. He punched the lightning and kicked the thunder. The power of the stars enveloped his iron fist and swept up a huge wave. Whoosh! A huge wolf was stirred up in the northern sea. Yi Qinghan stepped on the huge wave. His divine sense wasn't much weaker than Gu Jiutian's. His spiritual power was unimaginably strong. He could even distort the lightning and imprison the surroundings. Whoosh! A waterspout swept the sky. Yi Qinghan drove it straight into the clouds. His flesh and blood was bathed in lightning. He was constantly injured and recovering. Yi Qinghan's 5 elements were balanced. At this time, the 5 elements beast showed its power again. It devoured the power of lightning in Yi Qinghan's body and fed back the orthodox immortal spiritual power. Time passed by quickly. The sea roared, and the vicissitudes of the world were revealed. Yi Qinghan's black hair danced wildly. He was unyielding in the golden immortal tribulation. His upper body was naked, and his skin was copper and his bones were iron. Under the illumination of the lightning, he was even stronger and full of wildness. Gu Jiutian, who was standing in the distance, felt her eyelids twitch. She had never seen someone transcend the tribulation like this. He didn't take the golden immortal tribulation seriously at all. However, Gu Jiutian didn't have time to watch for long. Her thunder tribulation was also attracted by Yi Qinghan's thunder tribulation. Dark clouds covered the sky. Her cultivation level was naturally achieved. She didn't need to spend any effort to reach the first stage. Whoosh! Gu Jiutian rushed towards the North Sea. Together with Yi Qinghan's thunder tribulation, they formed a lightning dragon that pierced through the North Sea. Huge waves surged and flooded the northern part of the North Sea island. It was blocked by a large number of mountains. Otherwise, the entire North Sea island would have been submerged by the sea. Yi Qinghan sat on the lightning. He reached his hands into the sky and began to actively absorb the power of lightning to refine his golden body. The fourth level of the art of human Tao automatically appeared in his sea of consciousness. The connection between him and the human Tao Emperor Pagoda became clearer. The door to the fourth level opened for him. The immemorial ancient vine that was subdued in the gloomy divine land attacked wildly. However, its power was weak in the face of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. It didn't have any effect. It wasn't that it couldn't absorb the power in the pagoda. In just a few decades, it became much weaker and its vines withered. "Let me out! I'm going to kill you!" The immemorial ancient vine roared. Its vines flapped in the air. Yi Qinghan didn't care about the immemorial ancient vine. It couldn't do anything in the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. At this time, Yi Qinghan sat in the lightning tribulation and bathed for 3 days. The tribulation clouds dispersed automatically, and a ray of immortal light bathed him. It officially recognized Yi Qinghan as an immortal golden immortal. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. Seeing that Gu Jiutian was still undergoing the tribulation, he didn't disturb him. His figure flashed and entered the North Sea Island. He came to the human Tao Emperor Pagoda and looked at the immemorial ancient vine. He smiled disdainfully and said, "You're a prisoner and you still dare to behave so atrociously. Since you don't want to live, I'll fulfill your wish." Whoosh! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and the star-twining vine on sky-gazing peak was sucked into the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. Then, he used the pagoda's power to suppress the immemorial ancient vine. He said to the star-twining vine, "Devour it! Take its origin!" The star-twining vine was extremely excited. It pounced forward and used countless vines to entangle Gu Jiutian, desperately absorbing its origin and power. Roar, screech. "Spare me! I'm willing to serve you as my master." The immemorial ancient vine couldn't break free from the human Tao Emperor Pagoda's suppression. It growled and begged for mercy. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan was cold and merciless. He didn't give it any chance. Yi Qinghan casually summoned the 13 dark priests on the 3rd level and let them see how the immemorial ancient vine begged and regretted. "This is the result of offending me. I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. When I get angry, you won't have a chance to regret it," Yi Qinghan said coldly. The 13 dark priests trembled, their eyes filled with fear. Chapter 26:17. The 13 dark priests were no match for Yi Qinghan in terms of cultivation level and combat strength. Moreover, they were still in the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. There was only despair and no hope left. Yi Qinghan slowly turned around and looked down at the 13 of them. He said coldly, "I'll give you one more chance. Submit or die." Yi Qinghan, the Taijiang divine clan is of the supreme bloodline. We will never be slaves. The leader of the dark priests pretended to be strong and growled, trying to vent the fear in his heart. Boom! Yi Qinghan grabbed at the air and covered the dark priest with his divine sense. It was as if the 5 elements' hand had grabbed him by the neck and lifted him up. His cough. The strongest dark priest didn't even have a chance to fight back in front of Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's divine sense locked onto the dark priest's throat and lifted him up. He looked up and smirked. He said disdainfully, "Never be slaves? How is the primordial divine will related to the Taijiang divine general?" Boom! Yi Qinghan pressed his hand down and the dark priest's body was smashed deep into the ground. Smoke and dust rose as the power of human Tao crushed his bones. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan lifted his hand again and pulled him into the air, then tossed him to the star-twisting vine. "Since you don't want to be a slave, then become the star-twisting vine's nourishment and experience a long period of fear," Yi Qinghan said calmly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Poochie! The star-twisting vine danced and several green vines pierced through the dark priest's limbs and bones, fixing him in the air. It slowly absorbed his divine power and origin energy and refined them into its own nourishment. The dark priest's throat was pierced and he couldn't even scream. He could only struggle in his death throes. Bang! The remaining 12 dark priests were terrified and in despair. Their legs gave way and they knelt in front of Yi Qinghan. "Master, we are willing to submit." The corners of Yi Qinghan's lips curled up in disdain. What god clan? Primordial immortal clan? As long as humans were strong enough, they could still be enslaved. Boom! The Great Spirit-controlled divine art instantly entered the sea of consciousness of the dark priests, forcefully controlling their souls. The 12 dark priests became 12 slaves. Yi Qinghan stared at the 12 dark priests and muttered to himself, "I wonder if they can become my slaves after refining the primordial godhood?" This thought reverberated in Yi Qinghan's mind. He didn't care about the lives of these 12 people. If he could obtain the divinity of the Taijiang Shrine, he would definitely experiment a few times. If he could control and enslave the primordial shrine, that would definitely be the best news. After controlling the 12 dark priests, Yi Qinghan went into seclusion again. He wanted to stabilize his first-level soul and comprehend some divine arts and secret arts. As for the 4th level of the human Tao, it wasn't something he could comprehend in a short period of time. Half a month later, Gu Jiutian walked out of the golden immortal tribulation and stepped into the inner residence of Guangzhong. Seeing that Yi Qinghan was still settling down, he sat at a distance to adjust his breathing and calm his mind. Once one entered the Big Brother realm, the world would change. They were no longer on the same level. The difference between immortals and mortals. One step at a time. The noble battle was still accumulating power, waiting for one side to lose. Battles between big brothers were usually very long. A few years was considered short, but at most hundreds or even thousands of years. After all, the difference wasn't big. However, once one side lost, they would be quickly defeated by the other side. One careless move and the whole game would be lost. It was because of this earth-shattering battle that the world no longer paid attention to the northern divine island. Even the 2 golden immortal tribulations didn't cause a stir, giving Yi Qinghan and Guangzhong 100 years of time. In the sky, the ancient heavenly emperor fought bravely. The flame ancestor's arm merged with the primordial spirit's bloodline. The flame ancestor's soul had collapsed, but the bloodline's will was still there. The ancient heavenly emperor's right arm began to bleed, and his veins bulged. It was starting to backfire. It was impossible for there to be no bloodline conflict. However, the flame ancestor was dead after all. As long as the ancient heavenly emperor used the flame ancestor's arm for a long time, there would be a backlash. Although the ancient heavenly emperor was strong, he was not as strong as the flame ancestor's bloodline. Even the dead flame ancestor's bloodline would be revived after a long period of use. Suppressing the ancient heavenly emperor was not a problem at all. The ancient heavenly emperor was enraged. He used almost all of his strength, and the backlash from the flame ancestor's arm grew stronger. The great peak mountain master was directly smashed into the clouds from the sky. His flesh and blood splattered everywhere, and his immortal body was almost broken. Boom! The ancient heavenly emperor punched Mu Wuxun's seal. This punch was unstoppable. It pierced through mountains and rivers, and directly landed on the great peak mountain master's chest. Poof! The great peak mountain master's face twisted. His body curled up and fell straight to the ground. The friction in the void created towering flames. Ah! The great peak mountain master screamed miserably and let out an unwilling roar. He was defeated. He was very unwilling to admit defeat. Unfortunately, before the ancient heavenly emperor could kill him, a deep abyss broke through the void and rushed into the clouds from the ground. Immortal light filled the sky, and a powerful leg kicked the flame ancestor's arm. Boom! It was another peerless third-stage cultivator with a special primordial bloodline. His bloodline erupted, and his leg broke through time and space. It collided with the ancient heavenly emperor's right arm. The shock wave exploded, and it spread for more than 10,000 miles. It was as if an ancient star had exploded. The ancient heavenly emperor's divine power was exhausted, and he was directly kicked more than 100 miles away. Whoosh! The ancient heavenly emperor flew backward, and the flesh on his right arm rapidly withered. The ancient heavenly emperor could not hold on any more. He swung his right hand fiercely and took the initiative to break the connection with the flame ancestor's arm. Whoosh! The flame ancestor's arm broke free from his control and was thrown downward by the ancient heavenly emperor. It pierced through the clouds and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The ancient heavenly emperor did not have time to find the peerless third-stage cultivator for revenge, so he directly chased after it. He had spent a lot of effort to find the flame ancestor's arm, and he had endured endless pain to refine it. How could he let it be lost? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. There was more than one person who had their eyes on the flame ancestor's arm. In an instant, at least 10 experts rushed toward the flame ancestor's arm north. The flame ancestor's arm seemed to have its own will. It borrowed the force of the ancient heavenly emperor's throw and went straight to the North Divine Island. Whoosh! The flame ancestor's arm's fists were still tightly clenched. It shattered the void and flames filled the sky. Yi Qinghan was awakened from his closed-door cultivation. The power from his bloodline was calling out to him, and the shock waves from the flame ancestor's arm were even more terrifying. Everyone on the North Divine Island was awakened. Whoosh! Boom! The flame ancestor's arm seemed to be trying to shake off the others. It pierced through the void, passed through the heaven-suppressing prefecture, and slammed into the North Divine Island. Boom! The flames flattened everything as the flame ancestor headed straight for the inner sect of the Kuang Manor. Yi Qinghan rushed out of the inner sect's back mountain and charged toward the outer sect. He channeled his power and charged toward the flame ancestor's arm. Bang! Pooh! The flame ancestor's arm seemed to have its own will, but it did not. The flame ancestor's arm pierced through the void and slammed into Yi Qinghan's defense. In the blink of an eye, the flame ancestor's arm penetrated the defense and slammed into Yi Qinghan's chest. The punch almost suffocated Yi Qinghan. His soul was shattered and he almost fainted. Cough cough. Yi Qinghan hugged the flame ancestor's arm and coughed out blood. He looked at the flame ancestor's arm in confusion. He had no idea that it was the flame ancestor's arm. After flying for so long, the flame ancestor's arm's bloodline power was depleted. It would take a long time for the flame ancestor's arm to recover. What the hell? Who hurt me with a hidden weapon? Yi Qinghan glared at the sky and looked around, but he did not see anyone. However, after Yi Qinghan coughed out blood, the flame ancestor's arm's bloodline quickly fused with his right hand. It was almost as if the flame ancestor's arm had merged with his right hand. Even if the ancient heavenly monarch appeared, he might not be able to tell that it was the flame ancestor's arm. Whoosh! Hua! At least 10 figures were flying toward the North Divine Island. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He quickly took out a few shrouds he got from the Crying Ghost Ridge and put on 2 of them. He was afraid that his identity would be exposed. Chapter 26:18. Yi Qinghan was wearing 2 pieces of shroud. His expression was solemn as he looked at the experts rushing towards him. A chill ran down his spine. Hua! Xiao, Gu Jiutian, who was hiding at the side, appeared behind Yi Qinghan and pressed down on his shoulder, whispering, "Don't panic, that's Yen Zhu's arm. Just say you didn't see anything or you'll die, the whole crazed manor will die, no one will live." Yi Qinghan was shocked. He didn't expect the hidden weapon to be Yen Zhu's arm. Shua! Gu Jiutian quickly left Yi Qinghan's side, pretending to be calm as he waited for the experts to arrive. Yi Qinghan took away the human Dao Sovereign Tower and grabbed the heaven-suppressing saber. Without the heaven-suppressing saber, he would be dead for sure. Shio 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 shio. All the experts appeared in the heaven-suppressing palace's district, and arrived at the North Divine Island in just a few flashes. Dozens of experts, their bloodline power soaring to the sky. Ancient Heavenly Monarch, District Master, Lord Zun Long, Lord Ling Yang, and many others who had never shown their faces before. Boom! Bang! The experts all arrived, but Yen Zhu's arm disappeared as they lost their sense of direction. When the ancient Heavenly Monarch saw Gu Jiutian, his anger was instantly quelled. He took a deep breath and said, "Tian, you're here too." "Yeah, did you win?" Gu Jiutian asked indifferently. Gu Jiutian's aura surged and he said proudly, "Of course I won. No one in this world is my match. No matter how strong you are, there is one person you can never defeat. That's you." Gu Jiutian replied coldly. The ancient Heavenly Monarch clenched his fists. His eyes were cold as he looked around and stared at Yi Qinghan. He then asked, "Did a divine weapon fall here?" Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows. He knew who the ancient Heavenly Monarch was, but he still asked, "Who are you? What divine weapon? I didn't see it." The ancient Heavenly Monarch breathed out a breath of hot air. This was the first time he was asked such a question. "You don't know who I am?" the ancient Heavenly Emperor asked coldly. Yi Qinghan snorted and replied coldly, "Then you don't know who this marquis is? Don't you know how to say please when you ask a question?" All of the other powerful beings were taken aback by this question, and even the ancient celestial Dharch was taken aback. He didn't expect to be questioned by a brat like this, and he couldn't help but blush. Gu Jiutian, on the other hand, was amused. He seemed to be happy that the ancient Heavenly Emperor had been insulted. The district lord had a smile on his face as he came to Yi Qinghan's side. He extended his hand and introduced, "Fellow Taoist Heavenly Emperor, it seems like you don't know the heaven-suppressing Marquis of my azure venerable immortal empire. I wonder if fellow Taoist Heavenly Emperor is as impolite as you are when you meet the Heavenly Emperor of my azure venerable immortal empire." The ancient Heavenly Emperor sneered and clenched his fist. If Gu Jiutian wasn't here, he would have been enraged. This old man is the ancient Heavenly Emperor. "Greetings, Marquis Yi. I wonder if Marquis Yi can tell me the whereabouts of the divine weapon." The ancient Heavenly Emperor took a deep breath and suppressed his anger as he said in a low voice, "I didn't see the divine weapon, but I did see a ball of flame heading towards the North Sea," Yi Qinghan said indifferently. "Impossible!" Several third-degree realm big shots shouted out in unison. At their level, the aura of the Yen ancestor's arm had disappeared when it reached this place. If it headed towards the North Sea, there would definitely be some information exposed. The ancient Heavenly Emperor's eyes were like torches as he looked at Gu Jiutian and Yi Qinghan. He seemed to know that Gu Jiutian wouldn't tell him the answer, so he could only stare at Yi Qinghan. However, Yi Qinghan's eyes were filled with disdain and disdain. In the end, the ancient Heavenly Emperor began to observe the surroundings. There was an obvious scratch mark that was dozens of meters long and very deep. Furthermore, it was a mark that had just been created by friction. The ancient Heavenly Emperor pointed at the mark and said majestically, "Heaven-suppressing Marquis, it's best that you don't hide some things. That belongs to me, and no one in this world dares to hide it." Yi Qinghan shrugged and said indifferently, "What's wrong with this mark? I fought with His Highness Jiutian and unfortunately lost. I'm not willing to talk about it, but since Your Highness wants to know, I don't mind losing some face. As long as you're happy, it's fine. I was fighting with heaven-suppressing Marquis just now, and I did see a ball of flame heading towards the North Sea from the southeast. There's no need for heaven-suppressing Marquis to lie to you. You can't feel the aura because your cultivation isn't high enough. Don't wrongly accuse a good person," Gu Jiutian said bluntly. "Stupid girl, you're courting death." An unknown god's aura was very strange. It was very ancient, and when it moved, it suppressed the bloodline of the experts around. The North Sea Divine Island fell into a dead silence. Hua! Boom! Gu Jiutian instantly unleashed his main god bloodline. His divine sense and divine power were very pure. It was obvious that he was the future divine sense main god of this generation. Divine General Yao Yen, I think you're the one courting death. As a divine general, how dare you offend the main god's bloodline? Are you trying to defy the heavens? Gu Jiutian coldly retorted. Boom! Yi Qinghan drew his saber and stood beside Gu Jiutian. Their auras overlapped and surged through the galaxy. Although they were only in the first degree, their battle intent was not much weaker than those in the third degree. Not to mention, he had the heaven-suppressing saber. Since I'm the heaven-suppressing Marquis, how can I suppress the heavens if I'm not strong enough? You can fight the kings, but it's best that you don't fight in the heaven-suppressing prefecture. Don't let the shockwaves touch my territory's borders, or else you'll be my enemy. You're all old kings, and I don't want to offend you. But if you offend me, it'll be hard to talk to you, Yi Qinghan warned coldly. Hiss hiss hiss. The dozens of third-degree experts and divine general inheritors all gasped. On one hand, it was because Gu Jiutian's main god aura was formed, and she was only missing one main god's core. On the other hand, they were angered by Yi Qinghan. How weak was he? He was only in the first degree, and he had just broken through. How dare he provoke the older generation experts? The ancient heavenly monarch breathed out a few mouthfuls of murky air. He was furious, but in order to save Gu Jiutian, his only descendant, he could only swallow his anger and force a smile. My dear daughter said she went to the North Sea, so she went to the North Sea. The Yen ancestor's arm is not as important as his daughter. Jiutian, come back with me. I know I'm wrong, the ancient heavenly monarch said solemnly. The gods and some third-degree experts seemed to have been in seclusion for too long, or perhaps they were too young to know that Gu Jiutian was the ancient heavenly monarch's daughter. They were all shocked. Only those with the ancient heavenly monarch's bloodline were worthy of being the main god's bloodline. Otherwise, they could just kill her. If they couldn't kill her, Gu Jiutian's godhead would return to her position and she would become the main god's divine sense. Divine General Yao Yen did not know of Your Highness's identity. Please forgive me, Your Highness. Divine General Yao Yen immediately bowed. Although Yao Yen was not a subordinate divine general of the divine sense main god, a main god was still a main god. A subordinate divine general was still a subordinate divine general. A divine general would never dare to challenge a main god's authority. Not even a main god's bloodline. Greetings, Your Highness. On the surface, many of the immemorial divine temple's inheritors bowed. As for whether they respected Gu Jiutian in their hearts, that was unknown. The other immemorial divine temple's bloodline and the owner did not bow. Gu Jiutian's bloodline was high, but the owner's bloodline was not bad either. Some of the immemorial divine temple's inheritors had high cultivation, so their status was naturally the same as Gu Jiutian's. There was no need for them to bow. Gu Jiutian said bluntly, "The immemorial divine temple has collapsed, and the godhead is gone. Why are you still pretending? Who really respects the main god's bloodline? If you really do, then leave the North Sea Island. There is no Yin ancestor's arm or divine weapon here. If you want to fight a noble battle, please go to the Void Ridge. Don't fight in the immortal world." The noble battle was a battle between kings and marquises. No one would be able to escape. There would definitely be no neutral. They could challenge themselves, form their own factions, or even fight against a group of heroes alone. As long as they had the confidence. There was only one goal in the noble battle, and that was to step on countless corpses to reach the immortal emperor realm. If no one became the immortal emperor, the noble battle would not end. Or if everyone died, that would be the end of the noble battle. Chapter 26:19. If no one claimed the throne, the nobles would fight endlessly. Yi Qinghan's pupils constricted. If immortal Emperor Qing Zun and the immortal Dragon Emperor claimed the throne, how many nobles would die? If they started the battle now, wouldn't the nobles at the peak of the profound immortal realm be nothing but fodder? The dozens of experts before him represented the pinnacle of the immortal realm. If they started the battle, no one would be able to stop them. Otherwise, they would kill all the nobles one by one and there would be no chance to resist. Sound the Emperor drum. All nobles and cultivators above the golden immortal realm are to leave the immortal realm and enter the Void Ridge. Anyone missing will have their entire family killed. A primordial divine general broke the silence of the northern divine island and said coldly, "Then sound the Emperor drum. This battle will come sooner or later. No one knows who will claim the throne." Another person with a special primordial bloodline said confidently. The ancient heavenly emperor stared at Yi Qinghan for a while. He suspected that Yi Qinghan must have hidden the flame ancestor's arm. However, he didn't want to offend Yi Qinghan, so he could only give up. Whoosh! Dozens of divine lights scanned the northern divine island, looking for golden immortal level powerhouses. Waves of golden immortal aura rippled out. Green Lotus Sword Fairy and Yen Yunbei were already on the verge of breaking through and were beginning to emit immortal golden immortal aura. However, they had yet to undergo the tribulation. Huolingtian was still hiding in the human Tao Emperor Pagoda and hadn't been discovered. Heaven-suppressing Marquis, you're a new Marquis and there are many rules you don't know. Don't hide the immortal golden immortals. The noble battle doesn't allow anyone to choose. Let them come out together. Venerable Dragon Marquis sneered and said coldly. Yi Qinghan touched the corner of his mouth and looked at the owner. However, the owner nodded and reminded him in a low voice, "He's right. Once the noble battle starts, all golden immortals and nobles, including the royal family, must go to the Void Ridge or their entire family will be killed. Even if someone breaks through in the middle of the battle, they can't fight in the immortal realm and have to leave for the Void Ridge." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. And just when Yi Qinghan was still contemplating, another 5 figures soared through the air, appearing on the northern divine island. These were none other than the 5 ancestral gods of the Qing Zun immortal empire. Their combat prowess towered up into the sky, with white hair and youthful countenances. The divine blood in their bodies hadn't aged and was still at its peak. However, they didn't have the chance to break through to the Overlord realm, they could only assist experts to reach the immortal Emperor realm. The 5 ancestral priests were clearly protecting Workshop Master. All the nobles of the Azure venerated immortal empire were also protecting Workshop Master. The ancient Emperor Academy was protecting the ancient Heavenly Emperor. As for the Dragon Emperor Immortal Kingdom, no one knew. Perhaps only the venerable Dragon Marquis knew. It was very likely that it was the Jingfan Mountain Lord. The venerable Dragon Marquis had no chance of becoming an emperor. His strength was still lacking by a large margin. He was the commander and would always be the commander. The Sovereign Immortal Empire, the Kai Yuan Immortal Empire, the Western Tomb Immortal Empire, the Dragon Emperor Immortal Empire, and the Sovereign Immortal Empire all had their own protectors. There were also some people like the ancient Heavenly Emperor. They relied on themselves and had their own forces. They also had a chance to become an emperor. The martial record system had lost its function at this moment. However, there were still experts in the martial record system. They had countless primordial divine arts and immortal arts. The great Luo Golden Immortal Secret Art was one of them. The grand ancestor of the Eastern Imperial clan, Dong Wang Ing, was silent. He stood in the distance and stared at Yi Qinghan. Back then, when he was crowned as an emperor, he was only a minor Xian immortal. Now, he was already a golden immortal. His strength was no longer the same as before. If Yi Qinghan still wanted to kill the Eastern Imperial Grand Ancestor, the Eastern Imperial clan would definitely have to face a powerful expert. All the heroes were forming their own factions. In a king battle, fighting alone was simply courting death. Even if one didn't want to become an emperor or fight, one had to choose a side and assist others. At least there was a team that could take care of each other. Yi Qinghan was now deep in thought. King battle? Should he protect the owner or himself? It was unwise to protect himself. It was equivalent to sending himself to the front. If he protected the owner, whether she became an emperor or not, it didn't seem to matter. However, she knew her own identity. Once she became an emperor, would she still need him, the heaven-suppressing Marquis? However, the others didn't give him the chance. The ancient heavenly emperor and the others quickly left. The emperor drum was at the top of the demon ceiling cave. There was a war drum left behind from the primordial era. Usually, no one would dare to beat the emperor drum unless it was an important matter. Even if it was beaten, it would be someone in the fourth form or the immortal emperor. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. All the third and fourth form cultivators rushed towards the south, leaving only Gu Jiutian and Yi Qinghan. The owner only gave Yi Qinghan a look and left. Gu Jiutian's face was solemn. He took a deep breath and whispered, "King Battle, who are you protecting?" Yi Qinghan glanced at Gu Jiutian and asked, "Your Highness, who do you think I should protect? Does the owner know your identity?" Gu Jiutian didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked faintly. Yi Qinghan took another deep breath and nodded. "She knows. That's why I want to protect her. However, I'm afraid that she'll burn the bridge after crossing it. If you believe me, you can protect me. Once I become a Lord God, I'm absolutely confident that I can erase the bloodline hatred between us. I can't do it for others, but I can protect you. If I become a primordial divine Lord God, these 5 immortal emperors won't be my match at all," Gu Jiutian said firmly. Yi Qinghan's eyelids twitched. He didn't dare to believe the owner, but he didn't dare to believe Gu Jiutian either. Although he was indebted to them, this kindness was only temporary. "You can consider it. I definitely have a chance to become an emperor. When the time comes, many primordial god race will have to protect those with Lord God bloodline. They'll have to protect themselves." Gu Jiutian pleaded again. Yi Qinghan pondered for a moment and asked, "What about the other 5 primordial god bloodlines? Are there any with stronger cultivation than you? What if the other primordial god race protect those with other Lord God bloodlines? Won't you be in great danger?" "My father won't sit by and do nothing. I know he wants to become an emperor himself, but if there's no other way, he'll still choose to protect me," Gu Jiutian said firmly. Gu Jiutian looked at Yi Qinghan's silent expression and said lightly, "You decide. I won't interfere." Yi Qinghan smiled bitterly. No one from the Yen clan would protect him. Otherwise, why would he protect someone else to become an emperor? The feeling of putting his life in someone else's hands was very unpleasant. "I'll think about it. My choice will definitely be beneficial to me. Of course, I'll try not to be your enemy," Yi Qinghan said. Gu Jiutian nodded and said, "Gather all the lords and kings of the insane sect and set off together. When the emperor drum is sounded, there will be people in the 4th state patrolling the entire immortal world. No one can hide." Yi Qinghan thought for a moment and ordered, "All the older generation of the insane sect, gather at the encampment. Send a message to Yen Ao and the chess saint. Tell all the kings in the army to settle their affairs and prepare to head to the Void Ridge." Whoosh, whoosh. The spies of the insane sect all left the northern Divine Island and headed straight for the Heaven-Suppressing Palace. Yun Rue, the commander guarding the border between the Heaven-Suppressing Palace and the northern Divine Island, was also an expert on the celestial nation's heaven ranking. He was the first to receive the news, and he quickly passed the position of commander to his vice-commander before heading to the Heaven-Suppressing Palace alone. In the 5 million private army, there were at least 100 titled emperors. They were not golden immortals, but they were experts of the younger generation and the older generation on the heaven roll. Their cultivations were all close to golden immortals. The titled emperors were quickly gathering. Yi Qinghan and Gu Jiutian led the older generation of the insane sect out of the northern divine island and headed straight for the heaven-suppressing palace. Chapter 26-20. A general's success was built on 10,000 corpses, while a monarch's success was the destruction of 10,000 marquises. To become a marquis, countless people had died. To become a monarch, countless people had to die. Yi Qinghan did not want to fight this battle at all. Hence, outside of the heaven-suppressing palace, the insane sect's direct disciples and the private army had all gathered. Yi Qinghan's face was solemn. This battle is only for survival. Whoever becomes the monarch has nothing to do with us. Of course, try to cooperate with those who are friendly with us. Mount Jingfan, 9 Heaven's Highness, Lord Boss, the others are our enemies. Other than the Marquis title, there is also another mission, kill Tai Zun Marquis and Zun Long Marquis. Yi Qinghan said solemnly. Understood. The insane sect's experts were all excited. As long as they could avenge their enemies, the insane sect would be able to relax. But Yi Qinghan knew that even if they could avenge their enemies, the insane sect might be able to relax, but he would not, as the Yen clan's bloodline would always be entangled with him. Should I go to the Crying Ghost Ridge and inform the reincarnation Shakyamuni? Yi Qinghan thought to himself. If he came out, he would definitely be besieged. It was not worth it. Forget it. Since you have spent your entire life on the Yen clan's legacy, why should I disturb you? Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and soon, he made up his mind. The king duel would not involve the ancient grudges. It was only to protect a monarch. As for who to protect, it would be one of the three. The insane sect's inner sect's elders and the native king duels numbered around 300. Although they had a lot of people, their combat power was not strong. Even if they went, they would only die. But if all the kings were to go, it could not be helped. Yi Qinghan was very anxious. The emperor drum was about to sound. Huolingtian, Green Lotus Sword Immortal, Yen Yunbei, Gu Qingyu, and the others' golden immortal tribulation had yet to come. The others were still fine, but Huolingtian was not. Once he underwent the tribulation in the Void Ridge, wouldn't his identity be obvious? Gu Jiutian looked at Yi Qinghan's worried and sweaty face and guessed his worries. He reminded him, now that Huolingtian has more or less comprehended the Dharma of human Tao and his realm has been settled for 100 years, it should be stable now. As long as he uses the Dharma of human Tao, he will attract the golden immortal tribulation. There are many people in the eccentric sect who are close to the golden immortal realm. If you dare to take the risk, you can let them get close to Huolingtian's thunder tribulation. Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows and asked, Isn't that too risky? Do you have any other choice? The Emperor's drum won't sound so soon. The elders of the third-degree realm will definitely have a discussion and it will be very intense. No one will pay attention to what happens in the North Sea. There's no time to lose. If you want to protect them, you have to take the risk. Gu Jiutian reminded in a low voice. Huff, Yi Qinghan breathed out a mouthful of turbid air and looked towards the south, feeling uneasy. Those who are close to the Elder Realm, go to the North Sea and follow Huolingtian. I'll buy you 10 days. You have to go through the tribulation as soon as possible. Yi Qinghan pondered for a moment and called Huolingtian out of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. He said directly, Huolingtian, go to the North Sea and go through the tribulation. This is the scorching sun sword. I'll let you use it for the time being. Whoosh, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, Qitian Monkey King, Emperor Feng, and the other elders had been fighting on the battlefield for hundreds of years. Their cultivations had been suppressed to the point that they had no choice but to break through. Their potential had been dug out, and their cultivation levels had increased rapidly. Now they were on the verge of breaking through, but they were still 3 steps away. They needed the threat of death to step into the next heaven. Emperor Yi followed them. Some wanted to break through and wanted to use Huolingtian's golden immortal tribulation. All of them followed. Most of the king-ranked martial artists did the same. Yun Rui and the others also followed the Kuang sect's elders to the North Sea. Yi Qinghan and Gu Jiutian looked at each other. They then led the remaining mystic immortal king-ranked martial artists, who could not fight against golden immortals, and rushed to the south. At this time, the Biling Duke was already going through the tribulation at the Biling Mountain. Just as he had guessed, an unfamiliar golden immortal big shot had come to kill him, hoping to get rid of one of the Dragon Emperor's royal family members. Lin Wutian held his sword and fought. Although he had not gone through the tribulation, his sword Dao was sharp. He executed the 9 swords technique of the ancient Dao to perfection. In a short time, he was able to force the first realm martial artist to retreat. However, the other party came prepared. The first martial artist failed, but he managed to hold Lin Wutian back. The second martial artist attacked from the sky and went straight to the center of the tribulation. The Biling Duke was the inheritor of the ancient Dao sword Dao, and his battle power was incredible. The tribulation did not affect him much. However, once someone attacked him, the difference was huge. Moreover, the person who came was not a first-realm martial artist, but a second-realm martial artist. Whoosh, whoosh, boom, whoosh. Lightning flashed as 2 figures shuttled back and forth. The sword light was even more terrifying than the tribulation. Boom. Dark clouds covered the sky. The tribulation this time was not inferior to Yi Qinghan's tribulation. It was just that the Biling Duke's physical body was not as strong as Yi Qinghan's. Boom. Lightning dragons swept across the sky. Murderous aura filled the sky. A sword pierced through the lonely mountain. The battle between the 4 martial artists was earth-shattering. Lin Wutian had no choice but to use his strongest combat power. His tribulation was instantly drawn out. Boom. Dark clouds covered the surroundings, covering the entire northern mountain range. Whoosh, whoosh. The ancient Dao sword Dao was so powerful that it alarmed the martial artists around the northern divine region's cave of sealed demons. Everyone knew that someone had gone through the tribulation, and it should be the Biling Duke. Duke Zunlong and the Biling Duke did not have a close relationship. Although they were both members of the royal family, their relationship was a little stiff. Therefore, he did not prepare to go and protect the Biling Duke. The big shots of the Third Realm did not care about the birth of the First Realm at all. They were still in a stalemate. Some wanted to start the king battle and proclaim themselves as emperors, but some did not. The ancient Heavenly Emperor and the Extreme Peak Mountain Master were the most stubborn. Although the Extreme Peak Mountain Master was severely injured, he used his foundation and peerless elixirs to recover in a few days. His cultivation even improved. The 2 of them were at loggerhead. Their killing intent soared to the sky. They already had the aura of an immortal emperor. As a cultivator, you don't dare to die. You're just trash. The ancient Heavenly Emperor looked at the deities and immortals and said disdainfully. The primordial gods were not willing to fight. Only one of the 6 main god bloodlines had appeared. Once the battle started, who would they protect? The main god that their ancestors protected was the one they wanted to protect. However, if the other main god bloodlines did not appear, they did not want to fight. The 2 sides were at loggerheads. There was also a large group of neutral people. They were waiting for the result. They could fight or not fight. The district mistress was a neutral person. She was dressed in white and stood proudly. Some of the titled emperors did not dare to look at her directly. After about a month of stalemate, Yi Qinghan and Gu Jiutian appeared at the border of the spirit's central battleground. They found the district mistress and whispered to her, "District mistress, help me delay for another month." Many people in the arrogant sect are going through the tribulation. The district owner glanced at Yi Qinghan indifferently as he pouted his lips. Look at so many third and fourth stage realm big shots. Do you think I can delay them all by myself? Now that they are at loggerheads, there will be news soon. Chapter 26-21. In the northern divine region, outside the demon ceiling cave, more than 1,000 experts had gathered. The revered dragon army and the Qing Zun Immortal Kingdom's army had retreated to the back of the main city. The experts were debating about the situation of the world. One side wanted to sound the emperor drum and start the noble king battle, while the other side wanted to guard the emperor drum and stop the noble king battle. Once the emperor drum sounded, it meant that the noble king battle had started. No one could stop it. The master couldn't delay it. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed as he thought about how to stall for time. Just as the result was about to be revealed, Sovereign Yi suddenly emerged from Yi Qinghan's body. He coughed twice and said seriously, "This sovereign has calculated that the noble king battle is about to start. However, it's not now. It's 2 months later. The emperor drum will sound automatically and the will of the heavens will decide everything. If you don't believe me, just wait and see." His words stunned everyone. Even those in the fourth state didn't say anything, but this guy actually said that it represented the will of the heavens. Bulsh *T, who do you think you are? Do you have the right to speak here? An immemorial god priest scolded coldly. Sovereign Yi stood beside Yi Qinghan. On his left was the master, on his right was Gu Jiutian, and on his left was Yi Qinghan's heaven-suppressing blade. Who would he be afraid of? He wasn't afraid of anyone. Oh, a god priest is a god priest. You can even smell my mother's fart. Your nose is very sharp. This sovereign is impressed. Sovereign Yi cupped his fists and said seriously. Hiss! That immemorial god priest sucked in a breath of cold air and almost choked to death. He was a third-stage expert, but he was mocked by a little spirit pet. Ha ha ha! Some people were angry while others were happy. The happy ones were naturally the pro-war faction. The ancient heavenly emperor laughed and didn't give them any face. He then said seriously, "Even if what he said doesn't represent the will of the heavens, this sovereign represents the will of the heavens. 2 months, then we'll wait for 2 more months. If the emperor drum doesn't sound, this sovereign will personally sound it." The ancient heavenly emperor actually listened to the words of a little bastard. What a joke! What will of the heavens? The emperor drum has never sounded on its own. 2 months later, it won't. An old man in the fourth state said coldly. That might not be the case, Supreme Sovereign Yi said with a sly look. The old man in the fourth state was none other than the emperor of the Paragon Immortal Empire. He was of the same seniority as the Taihao emperor. However, he was much younger and was in the prime of his life. His bloodline hadn't aged and he had already entered the fourth state. His cultivation base was sky-high. At this moment, he was coldly glaring at Paragon Yi and Yi Qinghan as he spoke with disdain. What if the drum doesn't sound 2 months later? If the emperor drum doesn't sound in 2 months, I'll kneel down and kowtow to you to admit my mistake. If it sounds, I don't need you to kneel down. After all, you're an elder. You just need to admit your mistake to me. That shouldn't be a problem, right? Yi Qinghan laughed in his heart. Whether he knelt or not, Supremacy Yi didn't care at all. If he cared about his reputation, he wouldn't be a lowly bird. 2 months would be enough. Emperor Duan of the Paragon Immortal Empire took a few deep breaths. His fingertips trembled as he coldly glared at Yi Qinghan. After a long time, he clenched his fists and spoke in an awe-inspiring tone. This old man will wait for you for 2 months. If the drum doesn't sound, you and your master will kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistake. Yi Qinghan, however, brushed it off and raised his eyebrows. He's the one who calculated with his fingers, not me. Whether it's right or wrong is his problem. It's not fair for you to drag me into this. If the drum doesn't sound in 2 months, my spirit pet and I will kneel down and kowtow to admit our mistake. If it sounds, I wonder if Emperor Duan will also kneel down and kowtow to us to admit your mistake? Who do you think you are? How dare you compare yourself to this emperor? Emperor Duan coldly questioned. Boom! Yi Qinghan took out his long saber and stabbed it into the ground. His aura rose as he coldly replied. Just because I'm the heaven-suppressing marquis who represents Dijintian, the fourth state isn't that great. I wonder if you can withstand 2 saber attacks that contain the power of an immortal emperor. Bang! Whoosh! The aura surged in all directions. Yi Qinghan was a first-stage, immortal golden immortal. He was born with the aura of an emperor, and his domineering aura was exposed. With this aura alone, he wouldn't lose to a third-stage martial artist. As for the fourth state, this heaven-suppressing long saber could eliminate that disadvantage. Emperor Duan, may I ask if I'm on the same level as you? Yi Qinghan raised his head and asked proudly. Outside the demon-ceiling cave, it was dead silent. The prey that was hunted live in the North Divine region years ago was now on the same level as a fourth-stage martial artist. Marquis Zunlong was unwilling to accept this, and Marquis Tai Zun was even more unwilling. Many priests and primordial bloodlines had never heard of Yi Qinghan's name. At this moment they were all shocked and even a little angry. The older generation was actually being challenged by an ant of the younger generation. Hoo, dong dong dong. The king-ranked martial artists gathered outside the cave were all flustered. Their hearts raced as they stepped back, afraid that the marquis battle would start. Emperor Duan's old face was red as he stared at Yi Qinghan. His eyes were cold and vicious, and his murderous intent was extremely strong. Hua boom! Just as the place was in a state of dead silence, more than 10 figures appeared outside the North Divine region. Divine light shot up to the sky, and their aura was so strong that even some third-stage and fourth-stage martial artists were shocked and moved away. The identities of the newcomers were obvious. The divine patterns on their foreheads were shining brightly, giving people an unbearable pressure. Taijiang Divine Pattern. Naturally, it meant the Taijiang Divine Clan. Taijiang High Priest had recovered from all his injuries. Not only did his cultivation not regress, but it also stabilized in the fourth state. Once he entered the fourth state, he was looking forward to snatching the chief god's bloodline and becoming the Taijiang chief god. He would be the first person to establish the ancestor's bloodline. The moment Taijiang High Priest appeared, he confronted Yi Qinghan. Behind him, more than 10 Taijiang divine priests had already cultivated to the golden immortal realm. They had their own godheads and were extremely strong. They would not lose to a second-stage martial artist. Yi Qinghan turned his head slightly, no longer paying attention to Emperor Duan. Instead, he stared at Taijiang High Priest and said with a smile, "High Priest, you are old but strong. After being beaten up so badly by me, you actually managed to recover to such a perfect state in just 100 years. It's not easy. I admire you." Taijiang High Priest was furious. Cold air shot out in all directions. Taijiang Divine Pattern shot out a different order, and the divine light blasted towards Yi Qinghan's spiritual consciousness. Just as Gu Jiutian was about to move, he was stopped by Yi Qinghan. He waved his saber in front of his forehead and stomped on the ground, shattering the rocks under his feet. The divine light collided with the heaven-suppressing saber. The shroud fluttered, but he did not move at all. "High Priest, you've lived for so long, but you don't even have this much self-control. Since you're so anxious to start the noble battle, why don't you wait for 2 more months? I bet that the Emperor Drum will sound by itself. High Priest, do you dare to bet on it?" Yi Qinghan grinned. Taijiang High Priest laughed sinisterly. "This High Priest wants to bet your life. No problem. Then use your godhead and life to exchange for it. I've never been afraid of death. It's not my first time gambling with my life. I can afford to lose, but I wonder if High Priest Taijiang can afford to lose? Yi Qinghan asked confidently. Taijiang High Priest was stunned. Gambling with one's life completely depended on illusory luck? Who knew if the Emperor drum would sound by itself? I'm not interested in gambling with my life with you. When we reach the Void Ridge, I'll kill you like a dog. Do I need to gamble with my life with you? Taijiang High Priest replied coldly. Yi Qinghan shrugged. He looked at Emperor Duan again and asked faintly, Emperor, you're old. Your life is definitely not as valuable as mine. Even I dare to gamble with my life. Do you dare to gamble with me? My life is worthless. Why should I gamble with my life with an ant like you? Since you said 2 months, then 2 months it will be. If the Emperor drum doesn't sound, your spiritual pet will kneel on behalf of you. Also, I agree to start the noble battle. Emperor Duan's face was full of murderous intent. He wanted to kill Yi Qinghan. Chapter 26-22. Yi Qinghan didn't care at all. It didn't matter if he had one more enemy or one less. At most, he could work with the ancient heavenly emperor and a few fourth-degree realm cultivators. There was still a chance of survival. Supreme Yi didn't care at all. He was even prepared to kneel for 2 months. After all, he didn't care about his dignity. Outside the demon ceiling cave, time passed slowly. Everyone spread out and sat cross-legged to adjust their breathing, waiting for 2 months. On the northern mountain, 4 experts were fighting to the death. Sword light filled the sky, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. The lightning tribulation covered the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Roar. Lin Wutian and the Northern Mountain Duke used the ancient sword techniques, releasing the ancient power. It was like an emperor technique, extremely sharp and fierce. Time and space were constantly torn apart. Boom! Even though the two of them hadn't passed the lightning tribulation, they still forced the attackers to retreat. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Boom! Lin Wutian had Yi Qinghan's aura and dominance. He wasn't afraid of death and was completely fighting with his life. Blood stained the ground. He didn't care about the lightning tribulation and waved his immortal sword with all his might. Even his battle clothes were dyed red. The first-degree realm cultivator had at least 10 holes in his body. He was about to lose. If you want to die, I'll send you on your way. Lin Wutian became more and more courageous as he fought. The sword in his hand became more and more proficient. His sword danced in the sky and pierced towards the enemy's throat. Whoosh! A sword rainbow pierced through the sky and pierced through the dark clouds. It swept past the crying ghost ridge from the northern mountain, causing the world to wail and howl. It was earth-shattering. Swoosh! The sword light rushed to the demon ceiling cave. At this time, the gods raised their heads and looked at the northern mountain. They couldn't help but be surprised. Why would there be such an intense battle during the tribulation? The elders of the Dragon Emperor Immortal Kingdom's royal family looked at each other and said in a low voice, Long Feng, bring a few dukes to the northern mountain to see what's going on. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 4 figures rushed towards the northern mountain. 2 dukes and 2 emperors had almost reached the realm of Big Shot. However, their combat power didn't lose to Big Shots who had just advanced. Yi Qinghan frowned. This sword technique contained the solitary sword Dao. It was cold and domineering, a little like Lin Wutian's sword Dao. Cold. Tap tap tap. Yi Qinghan tapped his long saber with his fingertips, feeling a little worried. The Biling King is also here. Why is there such an intense battle to the death? Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and decided to head over personally to check it out. Following that, he said to the district owner, Don't let any 3rd-degree realm and 4th-degree cultivators follow me. I'll make a trip to the northern mountain. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan seized the air and left. He shifted and flickered, shattering the void and directly disappearing from the demon sealing cave. His speed was fast to the extreme. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. After a few vibrations from the shroud, only an afterimage slowly dissipated in the air. Yi Qinghan's speed was clearly much faster than Long Feng of the Dragon Emperor Immortal Kingdom. In just a few flashes, he was already above the heads of the 4 experts. Just as Yi Qinghan was about to leave, Grand Priest Taijiang signaled with his eyes, and a second-degree realm and 2 first-degree realm experts rushed out from behind him. But their battle power was obviously much stronger than the other bloodlines. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 3 of them chased after Yi Qinghan. Their speed was not much slower than Yi Qinghan. Whoosh. The 3 of them drew their swords in the air. Clearly, they wanted to kill Yi Qinghan before the noble battle started. It could also be that the 2 people on the northern mountain were slaves controlled by the Taijiang celestial tribe, and their goal was the Bailing King's ancient path sword technique. Just as the district owner was about to move, Grand Priest Taijiang's figure flashed and blocked his path. Your Highness Xian Yuan, don't be anxious. This is just the beginning, Grand Priest Taijiang said calmly. Gu Jiutian was not anxious. He knew Yi Qinghan's battle power very well. Even if he did not use his heaven-suppressing saber, the 3 Taijiang celestial priests would not be able to fight against Yi Qinghan. She placed her hands behind her back, and her over-god bloodline aura slowly rose. Her divine will over-god power covered the void. I wonder if Grand Priest Taijiang still remembers the Taijiang celestial generals' vow that the Taijiang celestial tribe will always support the divine will over God? Gu Jiutian stared at the Grand Priest Taijiang and asked seriously. The Taijiang High Priest's aura stagnated. He only hesitated for a breath before bowing and saying, "The Taijiang High Priest greets the successor of the divine will Master God. This old man remembers the oath of the Taijiang ancestor. I will abide by the oath of the Taijiang ancestor and forever assist the divine will Master God and the successor. The Taijiang celestial tribe greets the divine will over God's heir, Your Highness Jiutian." Whoosh. More than 10 experts from the Taijiang celestial tribe all knelt on one knee and said respectfully. Gu Jiutian did not know if they were sincere or not. However, if he could really get the Taijiang celestial tribe to support him, he might be able to become an emperor in the noble battle in a few tens of thousands of years and become a celestial overgod. In this battle, will you protect yourselves or become an emperor? Gu Jiutian's aura was monstrous, as if an immemorial overgod had descended. His aura instantly shot into the clouds and suppressed the surroundings, even suppressing the district owner and the other 4th form experts. Grand Priest Taijiang's eyes shone brightly as he knelt on one knee and said respectfully, "The Taijiang celestial tribe will protect Your Highness to become an emperor and become an immemorial overgod." Gu Jiutian's aura rose again, suppressing the primordial god tribe so much that they did not dare to make a sound. Apart from some other immemorial overgod's divine general inheritors, they had already reached the 4th form and were ambitious to become an immemorial overgod. Whoosh! Gu Jiutian's eyes flashed like stars, giving off an irresistible pressure to the 4th form experts. Since the noble battle will begin in 2 months, if the primordial god tribe is willing to become an emperor, you will definitely become a divine general and control the world. Gu Jiutian stood on the peak and looked down at the demon sealing cave, hoping to gain the primordial god tribe's support. The forming of factions had already begun. The other gods gasped. The other immemorial overgods' heirs had yet to appear, and Gu Jiutian had the advantage. If the other 5 immemorial overgods' heirs did not appear, they would not have a chance. The primordial bloodlines were disdainful, especially those whose ancestors were immemorial immortal emperors. Their auras soared to the sky as they fought against Gu Jiutian, seeking support. The district master's bloodline did not have the slightest advantage. Xianyuan Qingzuan was not an immemorial immortal emperor at all. His strength was still a distance away from the immemorial immortal emperor. In the past, he could only be considered a fake immemorial immortal emperor, comparable to the peak immemorial divine generals. The true immemorial supremes were all monstrous geniuses who had never appeared in the world. They kept a low profile, and would not appear unless they cultivated to the point where they could protect themselves. However, now that the noble battle had begun, it would be too late if they did not appear now. The ancient heavenly emperor looked at his daughter, who was like the sun in the sky. Her aura alone was enough to suppress him. He had mixed feelings. In this battle, he wanted to become an emperor. If gods came, he would kill gods. If immortals came, he would kill immortals. His daughter could also be used. Ka. The ancient heavenly emperor stood above the demon's sealing cave's entrance. His immortal robes were sharp and his bones were firm as he looked in all directions. Whoosh! Ancient Emperor Token. The immemorial runes shone with golden light. The ancient Emperor Academy had produced many nobles. They came from all over the world. Although they had their own loyal followers, they had a fixed target of loyalty. The ancient heavenly emperor. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh whoosh! In the blink of an eye, thousands of figures appeared in front of the ancient heavenly emperor. Greetings, Dean Ancient Heavenly Emperor. Regardless of whether it was a big shot or a titled emperor, all of them bowed respectfully. The ancient heavenly emperor had established the ancient Emperor Academy for this moment. These people were not much. The real army had not arrived yet. Once they arrived, his strength would be comparable to an entire immortal empire. Dong 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 dong. The sound of a drum seemed to have come from the immemorial era. It tore through the mountains and rivers. It was deafening. Whoosh! A golden light paved the way. The mountains and rivers shrank. The Taigu Emperor technique appeared. The first direct descendant of the immemorial immortal emperor had appeared. His bloodline was different from that of the immemorial immortal emperor. He had the bloodline but not the direct descendant. This expert had the emperor technique of the immemorial immortal emperor and the emperor drum. It was enough to command the followers and inheritors of the immemorial immortal emperor. Chapter 26-23. Immortal light blanketed the sky. A young man stepped on mountains and rivers, the sounds of nature reverberating through the air. Behind him were a dozen burly men, beating the emperor drum. Regardless of his cultivation level, this was a frightening sight to behold. Back then, there were not many primordial immortal emperors. There were 6 primordial master gods and 12 primordial immortal emperors. Their cultivation systems were different, but primordial master gods and primordial immortal emperors were on the same level. No one knew which primordial immortal emperor's inheritor this young man was. His aura was even stronger than Gu Jiutian's. After all, his cultivation level was close to the 3rd realm. At the pinnacle of the 2nd realm, his battle power was comparable to a pinnacle of the 3rd realm, or even the 4th realm. This was the advantage of an emperor technique. Besides, this person definitely had an immortal emperor immortal weapon. Once he used it, he would be invincible. He might not lose to the ancient heavenly emperor or the endless peak mountain master. Who is he? No one knew. There were many discussions trying to find clues about this legacy. Gu Jiutian stared at the newcomer and quickly found out who he was. A direct descendant of the great Sun, immortal emperor. Gu Jiutian's legacy memories were far more extensive than the ancient heavenly emperor's. He even recognized the emperor drum as the great Sun flaming destruction drum. Back then, the great Sun immortal emperor had used all his strength to wipe out the Yen tribe. At least 30% of the Yen tribe's experts had died at their hand. Yi Qinghan's great Sun flaming destruction mystique was a secret technique from this legacy. Even though Yi Qinghan had only used 1/10 of his strength, His battle power was still impressive. Hua! Boom! The emperor drum rumbled, affecting the sun, moon, and stars. The scorching sun hung high in the sky. Xiao xiao xiao! Just as the great sun, immortal emperor's inheritor, was about to descend, another three figures appeared. They were even faster than the great sun, immortal emperor's descendants. The key was that their cultivation levels were terrifying, and their bloodlines were noble. They did not lose out to Gu Jiutian. Without divine might, they were naturally from the primordial immortal emperor's tribe. However, when they appeared, they attracted the hatred and anger of the primordial god tribe. Back then, the Yen tribe was not fighting alone. Immortal Emperor Chu Shiliang was one of the 12 primordial immortal emperors. As the primordial immortal emperor, he was on the Yen ancestors' side. When the Yen tribe was attacked by the other primordial immortal emperors and the primordial immortal emperor, he was on the primordial immortal emperor ancestor. An ancestor. Immortal Emperor Chu immortal emperor. An ancestor. Immortal ancestor. However, this part of history was erased by the primordial immortal veins and primordial god race. They gave the immemorial imperial battle a good name. In order to ensure that the world believed that Chu Shiliang's bloodline had never appeared in history, nor were there any historical records of Chu Shiliang helping the Yen clan. And after Chu Shiliang and Yen Zhu died in battle, Chu Shiliang's bloodline also disappeared because of this. Who would have thought that they would appear again in this era? Many inheritors knew about the secret history of the past. Therefore, when the three appeared, their eyes were filled with killing intent. The three of them looked almost the same. 2 males and 1 female. They were triplets. All 3 of them were at the 3rd layer realm. Their cultivation was monstrous. However, they did not look old. They were all in the prime of their youth. 2 of them were as handsome as jade while the other was as beautiful as a flower. The 3 of them stood far away. They did not get close to the experts. They seemed to be wary of the other primordial immortals and primordial immortals. Chu Shiliang's tribe, you still have the face to appear in the world? Taijiang High Priest was the first to speak in a cold voice. Why don't we have the face? Did we steal your food? Shameless old thing. Didn't your father teach you how to behave? The leading young man should be the elder brother of the triplets. His face was cold as he retorted. You're courting death. High Priest Taijiang was furious. He was about to attack when Gu Jiutian stopped him. Gu Jiutian said indifferently, "What's the hurry? We'll talk about it in 2 months." Whether High Priest Taijiang was sincerely protecting Gu Jiutian or not, he had to respect Gu Jiutian. Otherwise, he would be despised by the other primordial immortals. He might even be attacked by them. The moment Gu Jiutian spoke, High Priest Taijiang had no choice but to quiet down. Many primordial immortals looked at High Priest Taijiang with disgust. This guy had destroyed many primordial immortals' inheritances. They hated Taijiang more than they hated Chu Shiliang's tribe. The experts of Demon Sealing Cave were waiting. As time passed, more and more experts appeared. There was no lack of primordial immortals. There were also primordial immortal generals and primordial immortal emperors. However, the other 5 primordial immortal emperors did not appear. At this time, Yi Qinghan had already rushed to Biling Mountain. The 4 experts were still fighting, but Lin Wutian's victory was already set. However, the Biling King was fighting a second-stage expert. He was gradually losing. The main thing was that he was restrained by the lightning tribulation, so he couldn't display any advantage. Yi Qinghan didn't even think about it. He directly rushed into the Biling King's lightning tribulation and dragged the second-stage expert out. Boom! Bang! Yi Qinghan's fist hit the divine weapon. His right fist actually broke the ancient divine weapon. The second-stage expert was stunned. His bones hurt and blood dripped. He retreated dozens of steps and stood there in a daze. Yi Qinghan's right arm seemed to have boundless strength. It could shatter the immemorial star and crush the immortal world. The faint aura of the Yen clan passed through the shroud. His right arm broke the divine weapon without even a scratch. The second stage expert seemed to have understood something. Just as he was about to shout something, a black shadow flashed in front of him and his throat was locked. Yi Qinghan grabbed the man's neck with his right hand and lifted him up. With a cold expression, he said, "What am I?" The second stage expert's face was pale. His forehead was dripping with cold sweat. He was trembling in fear and had lost control of his body. He wanted to speak, but he couldn't. He wanted to use his immortal energy, but he couldn't. It was as if he had fallen into a quagmire. The more he struggled, the deeper he sank. Boom! Yi Qinghan mobilized his soul and used his spiritual control divine ability to enter their consciousness. He found that their souls were controlled by the Taijiang clan. Moreover, the soul of the person controlling them was terrifying. The Taijiang God rune must be of a very high level. It was someone controlled by the Taijiang High Priest. Yi Qinghan's soul couldn't be compared to the Taijiang High Priest's soul. He couldn't cover the Taijiang God rune to control this person. Bang! Boom! Yi Qinghan's fist carried the Yen clan's void energy and pierced through the person's throat. The void energy spread through his limbs and bones. He actually killed a second stage expert with a single punch. Whoosh! At this moment, 3 figures appeared out of thin air. They were a second stage expert and 2 first stage experts from the Taijiang clan. Their combat power was much stronger than the person who died earlier. The 3 of them formed a triangle and surrounded Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan slowly drew out his long saber and said coldly, "The Taijiang High Priest doesn't dare to come, but he sent you here to die. Since you're not afraid of death, I'll send you on your way. Today, unless you want to exhaust 2 immortal emperor energy, get lost. Our target today isn't you." The Taijiang High Priest who led the group warned coldly. Yi Qinghan smiled arrogantly. He turned to look at Lin Wutian and the Biling Duke, who were undergoing their tribulations. He asked calmly, "Then who is your target? The Biling Duke? Or more directly, for the ancient Tao sword technique? Mind your own business. Get lost." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 3 experts from the Taijiang celestial race charged at Yi Qinghan, trying to force him away. The Taijiang celestial runes glowed brightly as they scanned the surroundings, trying to destroy Yi Qinghan's soul. As the descendant of the Flame Emperor and a cultivator of the human Tao, Yi Qinghan would not care about the Taijiang God rune's light. Whoosh! 2 pagoda shadows flashed in Yi Qinghan's eyes and shattered the Taijiang God rune's mysteries. He stomped on the ground and punched the leader. "Thank you for being with me. I'm not arguing with those mad dogs. If they bite me, I can choose to run. But if they bite my son, I'll definitely fight back. Any father in the world will fight back. Yesterday, I saw the unity of my fans. Thank you. Because the baby was diagnosed with myocarditis. He needs to stay in the hospital for more than a week. I brought the computer back to the hospital. After all, there are too many people in the hospital and it's very noisy. I also have to take care of the baby. I can't update quickly. For now, I'll update once a day. If there's any situation, I'll write a separate explanation." Chapter 26-24. Now that the Taijiang Divine Rune had lost its effect, Yi Qinghan's momentum was unstoppable. His fist pierced through the void and landed on the Divine Sword. The Divine Sword trembled violently at an extremely fast frequency, directly shattering the bones of the second-degree Taijiang Divine Clan expert's hand. How could a second-degree realm expert's divine sword be a match for Yen Zhu's arm? The divine sword was broken and the diamond arm was unstoppable after piercing through the divine sword. Yi Qinghan forcefully sent that expert flying 100 meters away. However, the Taijiang Divine Clan lived up to their name as the Divine Generals. Their combat power was far stronger than other experts of the same level, almost comparable to the current Immortal Emperor's bloodline. After being sent flying by Yi Qinghan, he flew in the air for a few rounds before landing firmly on the ground. The three experts from the Taijiang Divine Clan stared at Yi Qinghan with eyes full of panic and disbelief. This is impossible. There's no such perverted physical body. The leaders seemed to be suspicious. The mysterious aura released by Yi Qinghan's right arm was clearly the aura of the Yen clan. Your right arm has fused. The leader of the group had just reacted when Yi Qinghan's kick pierced through the ground. His body soared into the air and swept across the area, causing flames to fill the sky. It's too late for you to understand. Boom! Kacha! That strongest second-stage realm cultivator's surroundings were in chaos, and he didn't even have the chance to evade. He could only wave his arms to block, but unfortunately, this kick was even more terrifying than a divine weapon. It was as though an iron rod was crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. It directly broke the bones in his hand and twisted it out of shape. The strongest expert from the Taijiang Divine Clan was sent flying in the air. Whoosh! Boom! Yi Qinghan landed on the ground and spun in the air again. His fist went straight for the man's head. The Yen Zhu's arm merged with his, and the iron bone smashed into the man's chin. Kacha! The sound of bones breaking was crisp and ear-piercing. The Taijiang Divine Clan expert's face was smashed into a ball and lost his human form. At this time, he couldn't even scream. His vision turned black and his brain fell into a dead silence. He couldn't hear anything and lost the ability to think. Bang! Boom! Yi Qinghan took a deep breath, and without giving his opponent any chance to recover, he stomped his foot on the ground, causing the ground to crack. The Taijiang Celestial Race's expert was bounced up from the ground, and Yi Qinghan turned his body around and stretched his right arm backward, punching the expert's chest. Bang! His corpse was pierced through by the power of humanity. The empty saint power penetrated his limbs and bones. A powerful marquis of a generation died. His countless years of bitter cultivation destroyed his soul. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's expression was frosty and his eyes were as sharp as ice blades as he stared at the remaining two first-degree realm experts. Kakik! The two of them shuddered and their teeth chattered uncontrollably. They almost couldn't hold onto their swords anymore. He's from the Yen clan. He refined the Yen ancestral arm. The two of them wanted to shout, but their throats seemed to be blocked and they couldn't make a sound. They didn't even have the strength to move their legs, let alone fight Yi Qinghan to the death. The Taijiang Celestial Race dared to go against the bloodline of the Overgod, but they were afraid of the Yen clan. When they saw someone like Yi Qinghan who had refined the Yen ancestral arm, they couldn't even muster up the courage to fight. The Yen ancestral arm was 30 times more powerful than Yi Qinghan's attack power. It was enough to kill a second-degree realm expert. Roar! Whoosh! Just as lightning flashed and thunder rumbled, a sword ray flashed by. Gu Jindao's sword aura was monstrous, and the immortal sword in Lin Wutian's hand pierced through the neck of the first-degree realm expert, chopping his head off. In just a few breaths, 2 big shots had died, and one of them was a second-degree realm expert. It was terrifying. The Biling Prince and Lin Wutian could finally go through their tribulations in peace. Yi Qinghan stood in front of the two of them, like a mountain that no one could pass. At this moment, the two Taijiang Celestial Tribe members were most afraid of Yi Qinghan's fierce gaze. Yi Qinghan's ferocious gaze was like that of a primordial wolf. If they dared to move, they would definitely be attacked. Hua! Da Yi Qinghan's lips curled into a cold smile. The Taijiang Celestial Race was the cause of the primordial war. This race couldn't be forgiven. They and the Great Sun Immortal Emperor's bloodline were the two races that he would definitely take revenge on. The two of you have a chance to live. If you submit now, I'll only ask once. Yi Qinghan's voice was hoarse and cold. The evil in his voice sent chills down their spines. The Taijiang bloodline is noble, whoosh! Hua! Bang! One of the Taijiang celestial race priests growled, but before he could finish his sentence, Yi Qinghan attacked. Hum! The heaven-suppressing saber's radiance shot up to the clouds and then fell from the sky. The ground was cracked by the saber chi and sunk, sending dust flying. Puchi! Hua! The saber was extremely fast, and Wu Yu used his aura to suppress the other party. He was split into two, and blood splattered everywhere. Only a piece of a godhead fell out of his organs. The Taijiang celestial race's soul was destroyed, and he died on the spot. Potong! The other expert from the Taijiang celestial race fell to his knees. So what if he was a big shot? He still had to kneel now. It wasn't that he wasn't strong, nor was it that his Tao heart was unstable. It was the mental pressure that crushed his will. He wasn't willing to submit even if he had to kneel on the ground. He was even filled with disgust. Those from the Taijiang celestial race who hadn't formed a godhead might submit to Yi Qinghan, but once they formed a godhead, even the godhead would be filled with hatred. It wasn't something that could be controlled by the soul. Yi Qinghan's black hair danced in the wind. He dragged the heaven-suppressing saber and walked toward the kneeling Taijiang celestial race expert. He sneered disdainfully. You look like you want to eat me alive. If you have the guts, stand up and resist. Don't kneel on the ground without even daring to speak. You piece of trash. Sooner or later, your race will be exterminated. My Taijiang celestial race ancestor should have exterminated your Yen clan back then. Boom! Crack! Yi Qinghan kicked him in the neck and stepped on him, almost snapping his neck in two. People like you have the courage to curse others, but you don't have the courage to face them. You don't even have the courage to raise your weapon. What do you mean, exterminate my Yen clan? What do you rely on? Don't you have any self-respect? Yi Qinghan fiercely twisted his foot, almost breaking his neck as he coldly asked. Boom! The Taijiang celestial race expert coughed up blood. He stabbed his hands into the ground and writhed in pain. Before the primordial era, the Yen clan was weak, but they worshipped your gods. They fed you, gave you water, gave you the best things, and never asked you for anything. They only asked for protection and some living space. But you treated the Yen clan as slaves. Let me ask you, without the humans of the Yen clan, what kind of primordial god race are you? When the Yen ancestor appeared, didn't your Taijiang celestial race also get beaten like a dog and run away? Now I'm a human, a member of the Yen clan, but aren't you still beneath my feet? Do you dare to resist? Where does your confidence come from? Where does your pride come from? Yi Qinghan said coldly. Hiss hiss hiss. The Taijiang celestial race expert was trampled under Yi Qinghan's foot. His pride and dignity were crushed, and his Tao heart shattered. His previous self-righteousness was now laughable. I won't insult your Taijiang celestial race, I'll only kill. Boom! Yi Qinghan mobilized his immortal spirit energy and destroyed the Taijiang divine clan expert under his feet as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. He then cut open the corpse with a swing of his blade and took away the godhead. The three godheads were all taken away. This kind of godhead couldn't be spread, at least not for the time being. If possible, he would directly destroy it. Without the enemy's interference, Lin Wuqian and the Biling King entered a state of tribulation and sped up a lot. Yi Qinghan destroyed the corpses of the three Taijiang celestial race experts and the two elders, leaving no trace. A few days later, the two successfully passed their tribulation. They sat cross-legged on the ground for more than a month before quickly standing up. Lin Wuqian was excited. He bowed and said, Master, I've become an immortal golden immortal. The Biling King's face was also full of glory. He bowed slightly and cupped his fist. Thank you for your help, heaven-suppressing Marquis. Yi Qinghan calculated the time. Even if the two didn't wake up, he would forcefully wake them up because the 2-month deadline was almost up. Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice, Yes, Biling King, you don't have to be so polite. I only came to take a look for Wutian's safety. Since you've stabilized your realm, then follow me. All the elders should have gathered in the demon sealing cave. Whoosh! Without waiting for the two to respond, Yi Qinghan drew his blade and rushed straight to the demon sealing cave. There was only 1 day left before the 2-month deadline. Sovereign Yi looked at the emperor drum buried in the thorns at the peak of the demon sealing cave and grinned. I'm just joking. You guys won't mind, right? Haha. I think it's time for the noble battle to start. Crack, crack, crack. Some of the elders clenched their iron fists so tightly that the crisp sound was deafening. They stared at Yi Qinghan, especially Emperor Duan and the primordial gods. Their eyes were filled with deep killing intent. However, the district mistress wouldn't let them kill Sovereign Yi, at least not for the time being. Unless Yi Qinghan made it clear that he wouldn't protect her from becoming the emperor. Everyone, don't worry. There's still 1 day left. Even if the emperor drum doesn't sound, Sovereign Yi will just kneel down and apologize according to the rules. You don't have the right to kill him, at least for the time being, the district mistress reminded them in a crisp voice. 2 chapters were updated today. The result of a sleepless night. Chapter 26-25. Everyone, read as much as you can. I'll remind you how many chapters and when to update. Next time, I won't take up your word count. Sorry. In the sealed devil cave, there were many top exponents who were overlooking them, and some of those top exponents who had never appeared before were hidden outside the war zone. But their faintly discernible presence made those third-stage realm practitioners especially cautious. Supremacy Yi looked at the owner and Gu Jiutian with a flattering smile. If boss doesn't come back tomorrow, you 2 most beautiful goddesses in the world must protect me. If there's anything you need me for in the future, just let me know. The owner looked at Supreme Yi coldly and said, If you don't cause trouble, you don't need others to protect you. Supreme Yi smiled flatteringly. Beautiful owner, you're right. But I'm just helping boss. Humph, the owner snorted and ignored Supreme Martial Artist Yi. Time passed quickly, but these big shots felt that time was too slow. They just wanted to see the results tomorrow. The Emperor drum would sound automatically, even though they knew that Supreme Yi was just spouting nonsense. Time passed too slowly on this day. This kind of anxious waiting was like a fire burning their hearts. On the last day, more than 300 people from the Crazy Manor arrived at the Devil Sealing Cave under the lead of 14 Golden Immortal Realm Big Shot. Yan Ao and Huang Peng brought more than 60 kings with them, and almost all of them were at the perfect profound immortal realm. All of them were loyal to the Flame Monarch, because they were promoted by Yan Ao. Once they combined, it was a huge force. The Crazy Sect had an extra 14 Golden Immortals. Since the Crazy Sect stepped into the immortal world, it had produced 8 big shots in just a short 10,000 years. It was absolutely terrifying. Others might have to cultivate for hundreds of thousands of years to step into this realm, but those without talent would never be able to reach this step in their lifetime. In comparison, the Crazy Sect might be exaggerated, but if one looked carefully, one could see that the Crazy Manor was not just a fluke, nor was their talent exaggerated. The first advantage of the Crazy Manor was that the pressure of death was too great. Other than the Crazy Sect, they had no sense of belonging. Any power could destroy them. If they did not cultivate with all their might, would they always rely on Yi Qinghan to protect them? Secondly, the cohesiveness of the Crazy Sect was too strong. They wanted to protect and compete with each other. They wanted to reach the Big Boss realm as soon as possible and become Yi Qinghan's right-hand man. They did not want to be protected, but they wanted to protect their brothers and sisters. Thirdly, the others had been cultivating for hundreds of thousands of years, and most of them were slackers. How could they be as desperate as Kuang Fu? Fourthly, how many resources did Yi Qinghan provide to the Kuang sect? There were countless of them, so they didn't need to worry about resources at all. Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, Emperor Yi, Green Lotus Sword Immortal, Feng Huang, Li Feng, Stan Wuxie, Desolate Lord Yi, Xia Hoha, Lin Shukong, and Xia Ziluo, who had not appeared in the world for a long time, the demoness who had once stood shoulder to shoulder with Yi Qinghan. There were 12 elders from the insane faction. Including Huo Lingtian and Yun Rui, the two natives, there were 14 of them. Including Yi Qinghan and Lin Wutian, there were 16 of them. 14 big bosses had appeared in an instant. Even the owner was shocked. He felt like he was looking at a group of monsters. These 14 people were not even the peak of the insane faction. Lin Wutian and Yi Qinghan, these two were the most terrifying ones. This was a great force. Whoever Kuang Fu protected, their chances of becoming an emperor would increase by 10 to 20%. Gu Jiutian and the owner's eyes flashed. They both wanted to grab hold of this great force. It was not only because of the 16 big bosses, but also because they were united like one person. None of them were afraid of death. When they fought, they did not care about their lives. Gu Qingyu, Li Feng, Green Lotus Sword Immortal, Lin Shukong, Xia Ziluo, and the other experts cultivated the return to origin sword technique. Qitian Monkey King and Jiang Jingtian cultivated great technique. They were all given to them by Yi Qinghan. As for Desolate Lord Yi and Si Wuxie, their secret techniques were more messy. As long as Yi Qinghan knew a secret technique that was not from the Yen clan, they basically learned it. However, those who were familiar with Kuang Fu knew that there were fewer people, especially the older generation. Medusa, Yi Qintian, Mo Li, Feng Wuxie, and more than 20 elders were not here. They had failed their tribulations and were severely injured. Moreover, they were not crowned kings. Even if they were at the same level, they did not have to participate in the noble battle. Yan Ao and Huang Peng had been fighting all these years, and did not have much time to cultivate. Their cultivation had stagnated at the high level of the mystic immortal realm. They still had a long way to go before their tribulations. If they participated in the noble battle, the chances of them dying were very high. However, there was no other way. Huang Peng was crowned king and Yan Ao was a first-grade marquis. It was impossible for them not to participate. Everyone watched as the people from Kuang Fu gathered together. Their aura condensed into a ball. They were on par with a third-degree cultivator. Supreme Yi did not hesitate to rush towards the people from Kuang Fu sect. He grinned and said, "Lingtian, hurry up and protect the boss." Huo Lingtian had a handsome face. Even if he had become a big shot, he could not hide his wretched appearance. He was covered in a burial cloth, but it could not hide Yi Qinghan's domineering and murderous aura. No one would think that he was from the Yen clan. "Boss, follow me. I will crush anyone who dares to touch you." Huo Lingtian did not dare to use the scorching sun sword. He held the sky piercer in his hand. If he had an extra eye, he would be Erlingshin. Little brother is righteous. The boss did not choose the wrong person. If someone wants me to kneel later, help me beat up that son of a bitch. Make sure that his parents can't recognize him. Supreme Yi said with a gratified look. The people from Kuang Fu sect despised him. The people from Kuang Fu sect were puzzled. Who would want Supreme Yi to kneel? Supreme Yi felt very wronged. He told them about how he had to endure the humiliation and delay for 2 months. His story made the world mourn and all living things weep. The people of Guangzhou were a little embarrassed to laugh at Supreme Yi. Right at this time, Fan Yin walked out. She held the 8 trigrams in her hands, and her palms formed an imprint. Stars shifted positions, and endless radiance surrounded the demon's sealing cave. Profound divine techniques overflowed into the heavens. just from this aura alone, who dared to call her a fraud? Whoosh! More than 10 gold coins scattered on the ground. After a moment, Fan Yin looked up at the Emperor Drum in Demon's Ceiling Cave with a solemn expression. She said confidently, "The Emperor Drum will sound tomorrow at noon." Supreme Yi was overjoyed and asked excitedly, "Girl, don't lie to me. If it sounds automatically, I must make the boss marry you. If he dares to not marry you, I will kill him." Fan Yin blushed and nodded solemnly. She said proudly, "The divination will not be wrong. The Emperor Drum will sound tomorrow." At this moment, many people in the 3rd and 4th states cursed. This is the so-called Kuang Fu sect? They are all frauds. How dare they shoot their mouths off? You think a divination can predict everything? Do you think you are immortal celestial emperors who are proficient in the mysteries of the universe and stars? If the Emperor Drum sounds automatically tomorrow, I will live broadcast eating shit. If the Emperor Drum sounds automatically tomorrow, I will live broadcast chopping myself. Everyone laughed and was in a mess. The murderous aura on the eve of the noble battle seemed to have disappeared. With the interaction of the Kuang Fu sect, time seemed to pass faster. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Just as the dark night descended and 10,000 stars gathered, 3 figures shot through the air and arrived. They were Yi Qinghan, the Biling King, and Lin Wutian. These 3 were the real big shots, and their battle prowess was practically monstrous at the same level. As soon as the 3 of them appeared, Taijiang High Priest's face turned ugly. The first time, he sent 2 people. The second time, he sent 3 people. Since Yi Qinghan had returned, then the 5 of them were doomed. Yi Qinghan, where are the 3 of us? Taijiang's high priest roared angrily. Yi Qinghan looked at him coldly and said indifferently, "They couldn't even withstand a single blow. They are dead." The 3 big shots were actually dead. They died under the golden immortal tribulation. Even heaven and earth did not have the slightest reaction. It was as if 3 ordinary people had died. Or perhaps because the noble battle had begun, the death of the bosses would not cause a stir in heaven and earth. Chapter 26-26. The Taijiang celestial race had lost 3 golden immortals, and one of them was a second-stage golden immortal. This caused the atmosphere in the Demon's Ceiling Cave to become abnormally cold. The Taijiang High Priest stared at Yi Qinghan coldly. Yi Qinghan raised his head and looked at the Taijiang High Priest proudly. "When I stepped on the 3 Taijiang celestial priests, I realized that you celestial priests were not that scary. Which one of the primordial immortals, or those with special primordial bloodlines, couldn't suppress you? Is there a need to be so arrogant?" This sentence angered the primordial god race. Even Gu Jiutian was somewhat dissatisfied. However, while the primordial god race was dissatisfied, those with special primordial immortal bloodlines and primordial immortal bloodlines were happy. They all nodded in agreement with Yi Qinghan. This was the effect that Yi Qinghan wanted. If the Yen clan wanted to rise, the 3 primordial immortal races would have to kill each other. Zhang Fan, who was standing in the distance, looked at Yi Qinghan with a smile. The little guy that he had helped back then was now a dragon. He could step on the golden immortal realm and pick stars with a wave of his hand. Jingfan Mountain Lord quietly came to Zhang Fan's side and whispered, "Can you rope in Yi Qinghan?" Zhang Fan immediately bowed and said, "Mountain Lord, Yi Qinghan has his own will. He can repay a debt of gratitude, but he won't change his original intention. I can ask him, but forcing him will only backfire." Jingfan Mountain Lord nodded and said, "Ask him. Even if you can't protect me, you don't have to offend him completely. Even if we can't work together, we still owe him a favor. Moreover, the battle in the Void Ridge will take tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years. We still don't know who will become the emperor. We have to have a backup plan." Zhang Fan took a deep breath and bowed slightly. Then, he slowly retreated and turned to the Crazy Manor's camp. When Yi Qinghan saw Zhang Fan walking over, he bowed respectfully at a 90-degree angle, giving Zhang Fan enough face. Seeing this, Tai Zun Ho and Zun Long Ho were both angry and jealous. This bow should have been theirs, but unfortunately, they did not cherish it. Yi Qinghan greets Senior. Yi Qinghan bowed respectfully. Zhang Fan's dignified face was overjoyed. Yi Qinghan bowed to him in front of everyone, giving anyone face. Moreover, he was only at the initial stage of Big Brother realm, whereas Yi Qinghan was equivalent to a third-stage realm expert. When a heaven-suppressing marquis bowed to him, how could he not be filled with glory? Ha ha ha, you are now the heaven-suppressing marquis and also a big shot. In terms of combat strength, this old man is no longer as good as you, so just talk to me as an equal. Consider this old man taking advantage of you. Zhang Fan's face was gratified. He did not misjudge Yi Qinghan back then. The reason back then was the result today. Yi Qinghan still insisted, Qinghan doesn't dare. My life was fought for by Senior. Without you, I would have died in the North Divine region. How could I have the wealth and glory now? How can I talk to you as an equal just because of my achievements? Pretentious and sensationalist. Eastern Emperor Grand Venerable snorted. Jealousy surged from the bottom of his heart as he scolded across the air. Crack crack. Yi Qinghan clenched his iron fist and looked coldly at Eastern Emperor Grand Venerable in the distance. He sneered. The reason back then is the result today. Senior Zhang Fan's kindness is not pretentious, and the revenge you gave me is not sensationalist either. The 38,000 people of my insane sect died. Half of this debt belongs to you, and the other half belongs to Zun Long Ho. The two of you will definitely be buried in the Void Ridge. Buzz! The Eastern Emperor Grand Venerable waved his hand and the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell appeared in his hand. He asked arrogantly, just because I have the ancestral weapon, what can you do to me? The Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell can't protect your life. Your father Eastern Emperor Ing can't protect you either. Don't worry, I won't destroy your Eastern Emperor clan. There's no need to thank me. Just thank your good daughter Eastern Emperor Immortal. Yi Qinghan coldly said. The Eastern Emperor Grand Venerable had a sinister expression. He held the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell in his hand, and was still afraid of Yi Qinghan. He was afraid of Yi Qinghan from the bottom of his heart. Eastern Emperor Ing was old and had no chance to proclaim himself an emperor. Otherwise, Yi Qinghan would definitely not dare to go against him with the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell in his hand. The Eastern Emperor clan was desolate. The Eastern Emperor Grand Venerable was the strongest among the younger generation, but he was still stuck at the second level. Even with the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell in his hand, he could only maintain his combat strength at the third level. The king battle had yet to begin, but the atmosphere was tense. The triplets from Chu Shi's clan stared curiously at Yi Qinghan. How could a person at the first level be so arrogant? Rebutting Emperor Duan, the Eastern Emperor Grand Venerable Marquis, the revered Dragon Marquis, and the Taijiang Divine Clan wasn't something ordinary people would dare to do. There weren't many people wearing burial cloth. Glancing over, there were only Huo Lingtian and Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan himself was already very eye-catching. After rebutting so many experts, it was impossible for him to not attract attention. The triplets from Chu Shi's clan stared at Yi Qinghan. Their gazes were very strange, and it attracted Yi Qinghan's attention. Yi Qinghan stared at the triplets. He didn't know about Chu Shi's clan, and he didn't know that Chu Shiliang, the supreme immortal emperor, had once sacrificed his life to help the Yen clan. The Yen emperor's memories were mostly about his battles and human Tao. He didn't have any memories about Chu Shiliang. Gu Jiutian and the owner noticed the exchange of glances between Yi Qinghan and the triplets from Chu Shi's clan. Their eyes flashed, and they didn't know if they should remind Yi Qinghan. At this time, if they were to show goodwill to Yi Qinghan, he would be able to protect them and become an emperor. However, before the two of them could say anything, Zhang Fan also saw Yi Qinghan and the triplets from Chu Shiliang's clan. He asked faintly, "You know the triplets from Chu Shi's clan?" Yi Qinghan shook his head in confusion. He didn't understand why the triplets from Chu Shi's clan would look at him with such a gaze. There was no hostility, only curiosity. This Chu Shi's clan is the primordial immortal emperor bloodline that the primordial immortal race, primordial god clan, and other special bloodlines hate the most. Chu Shi's clan's ancestor, immortal emperor Chu Shiliang, once protected the Yan clan and offended all the other primordial bloodlines. Chu Shi's clan disappeared after the primordial gods' war. If you don't want to become the public enemy, don't go near them, Zhang Fan reminded him softly. Yi Qinghan glanced at the triplets from the corner of his eyes. He touched his face to hide the shock and disbelief in his eyes. He muttered to himself, "The Yan clan actually has helpers. These three siblings are from Chu Shiliang's clan. No wonder Zhang Fan was only reminding him out of goodwill. He didn't know that Yi Qinghan was a member of the Yan clan." Yi Qinghan smiled and said, "I'm a person who does things based on intuition. If I like these three people, even if they are condemned by the public, I will still stand by their side. However, I still have to thank Senior for giving me such useful information." Zhang Fan smiled bitterly and shook his head. He knew that Yi Qinghan had his own opinions and no one could force him to change them. Even Zhang Fan couldn't touch his bottom line. Zhang Fan took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Forget it. This old man won't say much about the three of them. However, I came this time to ask you for a favor." Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He guessed what Zhang Fan wanted him to do. However, he didn't point it out. He bowed slightly and said, "Senior, please tell me what you need. This junior will help if I can. If I can't, this junior will make up for it in other ways." Smart people could tell that Yi Qinghan's words were not absolute. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. He might agree to Zhang Fan's request, but he might not. Gu Jiutian and the owner stared at Yi Qinghan. Their eyes were filled with faint warning and expectation. Yi Qinghan pretended not to know and waited for Zhang Fan to make his request. Chapter 26-27. In the last 2 hours, everyone waited. 2 months had passed so slowly, and the last 2 hours were even more worrying. Supreme Yi looked at the top of the demon ceiling cave, which was covered in thorns, and even the emperor drum could not be seen. Finally, he looked at Fan Yin and asked weakly, "Senior sister, beautiful lady, are you sure you're right? The emperor drum will sound tomorrow?" Fan Yin said in a low voice, "It really will ring, but it might be man-made and not preordained by the heavens." Supreme Yi immediately sat on the ground and wailed, "How would I know if the bet is over, and the ancient heavenly emperor and the others sounded the emperor drum?" Yi Qinghan looked at Supreme Yi's aggrieved expression, smiled faintly and said proudly, "Since the emperor drum will start the noble battle, why do you still need to kneel? If anyone dares to make you kneel, I'll beat them up." "So you're saying that I don't need to kneel?" Supreme Yi was suddenly energized and asked Yi Qinghan excitedly. Crack, crack, crack. Yi Qinghan clenched his fist and said firmly, "The strong are respected. The Kuang sect is not the only one behind us." This was the reason why Yi Qinghan did not reject Jingfan Mountain directly. As long as he did not reject or agree, Gu Jiutian, the owner, and Jingfan Mountain's owner would not give up on the Kuang sect. Supreme Yi was suddenly energized and began to show off without fear. "I'm going to start showing off later." Supreme Yi grinned. Everyone in the Kuang sect was arrogant. The spirit of the Kuang sect made them not afraid of these big shots. Death was not scary, but kneeling was impossible. The stars shifted, and the demon ceiling cave at night was beautiful. The stars sparkled, and the moonlight was like water. Countless people stood silently in the distance, waiting for the war to come. It was like the main battle, and some were passive. Everything in the world had always been like this. Drip, 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 the dew formed by clouds kept falling, and the cold air was oppressive. Time slowly approached dawn. The stars dimmed and began to turn dark, as if hinting that the nobles were going to fall. The upright god planet was in the north, and it was dawn. It was slowly approaching the north. Whoosh, 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 several black-clothed figures rushed over from all directions. They didn't say anything and directly hid themselves in the darkness. It was unknown where they came from. As time passed and more experts appeared, Yi Qinghan felt goosebumps all over his body. Some of these experts made him feel like he was on the brink of death. He couldn't even find out where they were. Whoosh! At this moment, the upright divinity star turned to the north. Suddenly, there was a burst of light that lasted for about 3 breaths of time. Then, the entire starry sky dimmed. It was the second day. All the gods and heroes raised their heads to look at the sky, but there was no movement from the demon ceiling cave. Emperor Duan of the sovereign immortal kingdom and many other 3rd and 4th stage cultivators stared at Supreme Yi. "Bastard bird, are you going to kneel down or do you want me to do it myself?" Emperor Duan asked coldly. Sovereign Yi had Yi Qinghan as his backing, so how could he be afraid of Emperor Duan? At this time, he raised his head and puffed out his chest. He said disdainfully, "Old man, don't you even know common sense? I said that the Emperor drum would sound automatically today, but I didn't say what time it would be. Why are you in such a hurry? It's pointless to struggle like a cornered beast." Some people snorted coldly and no longer held any hope. Most of them began to retreat from the demon ceiling cave and sat down cross-legged to adjust their breathing. As time passed, almost no one paid attention to the Emperor drum above the demon ceiling cave. Dawn was approaching, and the darkness was completely shrouded. One couldn't even see their fingers in front of them. The mountains and rivers were dead silent, and the cold wind caressed the forest. Countless heroes set up camp. The main figures began to meditate, while the others were defending. The inheritor of the great sun, immortal emperor, had a cold face. He didn't even take the initiative to summon the world's elites to come and join him. Once the great sun flaming emperor drum sounded, the Archean followers would appear. Whoosh! "Your Highness, please meditate and rest. We will protect you." More than 10 burly men behind the inheritor of the great sun, immortal emperor, surrounded him. The emperor drum bloomed with light. The inheritor of the great sun, immortal emperor, nodded and then sat cross-legged in the distance. He no longer paid attention to the emperor drum above the demon ceiling cave. It seemed like he was also looking forward to the noble battle. Yi Qinghan glanced at Fanning out of the corner of his eye. He did not know whether the emperor drum would sound or not, so there was no need to waste time here. Thus he said, "Everyone, retreat 15 kilometers. Sit down cross-legged and adjust your condition." Hua! Yi Qinghan waved his hand. Under the cover of the night, hundreds of noble lords from the proud sect retreated. Just as Yi Qinghan turned around, a reincarnation vortex swept through space and time. It broke through the void from another dimension. The vortex formed a spiral cone and directly shattered mountains and rivers. It destroyed the thorns and weeds above the demon ceiling cave. A huge emperor drum appeared at the top of the demon ceiling cave. It was majestic, and the mountains and rivers trembled. The golden drum skin and golden drumsticks were made of unknown materials. They hadn't decayed until now, and were imbued with endless Tao technique. Once the emperor drum appeared, it shook the heavens and earth. Boom! Wang! The sound of the drum shook the heavens and the mountains and rivers. Without any warning, the emperor drum roared. Some experts below the Emperor Drum were not prepared for it and were sent flying while coughing blood. Boom! Dong 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 dong! The Emperor Drum continued to roar for a long time. The sound of the drum seemed to come from the endless primordial era. It spread through space and time, to the primordial era, and to the future. The sound of the drum swept through the entire immortal realm. The Emperor Drum sounded. The noble battle began. Hiss hiss hiss. Wah! Countless people woke up from their meditation and stood up straight. They gasped and looked up at the top of the demon ceiling cave. The drumsticks were not passive. The drum skin was deep, and the arcane mysteries were blooming. The drum of reincarnation seemed to be leading the immortal realm into reincarnation. No one could escape from this fate. Gulp. Countless people swallowed their saliva and had goosebumps. It was too strange. Even the inheritors of the great sun, immortal emperor, felt their hair stand on end. They looked up at the demon ceiling cave. It was as if the Taigu Emperor was standing in front of the Emperor Drum of reincarnation, waving the Emperor Drum and commanding the world to join in the war. Yi Qinghan and the proud sect turned to look at the demon ceiling cave. They shivered and felt a chill in their hearts. Supreme Being Yi was suddenly excited. He didn't expect that his nonsense would come true. The Emperor Drum sounded 18 times, but it didn't stop. Instead, it spread to the immortal realm and even to the distant Void Ridge and the ancient immortal realm. Yi Qinghan's eyelids twitched as he stared at the imperial drum above the demon ceiling cave. At this moment, he also saw a supreme existence beating the drum. The figure was very familiar, but he couldn't be sure who it was. Which tribe does this Emperor Drum belong to? Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. He suspected that it was the Yen tribe's Emperor Drum. Hua! Xiao! Xiao! At this time, at least 5 fourth-form invincible cultivators appeared above the demon ceiling cave. The ancient heavenly emperor and Jingfan mountain master landed on the left and right sides of the Emperor Drum. Their eyes flashed and looked through the void, as if they were trying to find out the reason for the Emperor Drum's sound. Which Tao brother used a great mystique to beat the Emperor Drum? Ka! Ka! Those in the fourth state all felt their hairs stand on end. The drum was clearly struck by someone in the dark, but those in the fourth state couldn't find any traces at all. This meant that the person who struck the drum was already very close to the supreme ancient immortal emperor realm and was much stronger compared to them. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed and he muttered to himself, "Someone beat the Emperor Drum? Could it be Reincarnation King?" Unfortunately, no one replied. The person who beat the Emperor Drum didn't do anything else. At the border of the Crying Ghost Ridge, Reincarnation Law gazed at the demon ceiling cave. Tears streamed down his face as he respectfully knelt before the Emperor Drum and kowtowed. "Your Highness, now that the Yen Emperor Drum has sounded again, it's a pity that I can't see your glory. This old servant really wants to follow you, but now that things have changed, living is also a kind of torture. Yen clan's ancestor, 9 princes and 36 protectors, only I am alive." Chapter 26-28. In the immortal realm, there were many fourth-form experts patrolling the mountains and rivers. Bang! Streaks of bloody mist exploded, spreading to dozens of miles away. Some young kings were unwilling to participate in the battle and hid in the mountains. But they couldn't escape the fourth-form divine sense, and were all killed mercilessly. 2 divine senses covered the entire heaven-suppressing prefecture. Yen Yunbei, Di Longtian, and at least a dozen other experts did not participate in the battle, but they were all kings. An unfamiliar fourth-form expert wanted to kill them but was stopped by the ancient heavenly monarch. "Ancient heavenly monarch, are you trying to break the rules?" A deep voice scolded. A chilling aura filled the air and the killing intent activated the 7 million-plus private army, the ancient massacre god, and the inner and outer sect army. Hua! The chess saint mobilized the army and their formation changed constantly. They devoured the power of the stars, and even the stars were affected. Yen Yunbei, Medusa, Di Longtian, and the others were all protected in the center. Facing the fourth form, the 7 million strong army was ready to die. The army split into two and waited for the arrival of the fourth form experts. Hua! The war flag of Quang Manor fluttered in the wind. The words Quang Manor on the flag shook the heaven and earth, and the totem of the 9 continents cauldrons seemed to be able to suppress the heaven and earth. Xiao, Yen Yunbei, Di Longtian, and the others were forced to come out from their closed-door training, and they looked up at the 2 fourth form experts. "We are not kings, we don't have to participate in the king battle," Yen Yunbei said. The unfamiliar fourth form expert frowned. There were many kings in the heaven-suppressing prefecture, but none of them left. Was there not a single one? The ancient heavenly monarch said calmly, "These people are not kings. If they are, I have my own information. The ancient heavenly monarch academy only accepts kings, and I have information on all kings. Divine General Yun Kai, do you not trust me?" "But they are already kings," Divine General Yun Kai said firmly. The ancient heavenly monarch frowned and asked, "So what?" "The king battle is for kings. As long as they are not kings, they have the right to not participate." Divine General Yun Kai took a deep breath and looked down at the army. He was intimidated by the aura of the Quang Manor's army. He might not be afraid of this army, but he was wary of their cohesiveness. One person who was not afraid of death was scary, but the entire Quang Manor was not afraid of death. Yen Yunbei, Medusa, Jian Chenxue, and Di Longtian were the strongest people left behind. Yi Chentian and the others were severely injured and would not be able to recover easily. The 4 inner sect elders looked at Divine General Yun Kai nervously. If he insisted on killing them, and the ancient heavenly emperor did not intervene, the insane manor would suffer heavy losses. Seeing that Divine General Yun Kai was still unwilling to give up, the ancient heavenly emperor reminded him, "There are loopholes in the rules, and they didn't break any rules. If you touch the crazed manor for no reason, I'm afraid there will be people who will fight to the death with your Divine General lineage." Divine General Yun Kai naturally knew about Yi Qinghan. In the Battle of North Godly Province, he faced off against Emperor Duan, Marquis Zun Long, and Tai Zun Ho. Then, he defeated Taizhong's high priest in South Godly Province. These were all military exploits. If one underestimated Yi Qinghan, they would definitely be attacked. Divine General Yun Kai shook his head and said, "Since the ancient heavenly emperor has spoken, I will give you a way out. After all, I don't want to be enemies with heaven-suppressing Marquis." Hearing this, Yen Yunbei and the others heaved a sigh of relief. The ancient heavenly emperor smiled faintly. Looking down at Yen Yunbei and the others, he said, "I will give you 1,000 years. Whether you can enter the first realm or not, you must go to the Void Ridge. Otherwise, I will not be able to protect you." Yen Yunbei took the lead and cupped his fists, bowed, and said, "Thank you, ancient heavenly emperor, for speaking up for justice. Thank you, Divine General Yun Kai, for showing mercy. We will definitely go to the Void Ridge within 1,000 years. The War of the Marquises would not end without tens of thousands of years. At that time, blood would flow like rivers and corpses would pile up like mountains. It was the same whether they went early or late. If their cultivation was not high enough, they would be courting death. Not only the insane manor people, but also the others. After the 2 fourth state experts left, Yen Yunbei, Di Longtian, and the others looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. Jian Chenxue said quickly, "Quickly enter seclusion. You must reach the golden immortal realm within 1,000 years." Everyone nodded and quickly returned to the northern Divine Island. Now that the 4th state experts had scanned this place, no one else would come. Without the other marquises, no one could threaten their safety. The chess saint began to train the army day and night. However, they had not attacked the revered dragon army in a short time. In the void, a floating continent spanned across the galaxy. All the stars were round or elliptical, but this continent was an irregular floating continent. From afar, it looked like a mountain range in the void. Therefore, it was named the Void Ridge. The occult law and order here were much stricter than in the immortal world. Therefore, the immortal world could not produce immortal emperors. However, this place could, and so could the ancient immortal world. If they wanted to start the War of the Marquises, they had to do it either in the ancient immortal world or here. Yi Ching Han led the insane manor people to the Void Ridge and landed in a mountain range. They were all very excited. Find a place with both offense and defense to set up camp. At the beginning of the War of the Marquises, we will only cultivate and watch. We will not participate in the battle, Yi Ching Han said in a low voice. Although Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian and the others wanted to fight, they knew that Yi Ching Han was worried that they would be at a disadvantage because they had just reached the immortal golden immortal realm. Therefore, no one objected. At this moment, 3 figures appeared out of thin air. 2 men and 1 woman. Their auras were very noble and elegant. The 3 siblings of the Chu Shi family. The leader was Chu Shi Junxian, the second brother Chu Shi Liyun, and the third sister Chu Shi Yao. The man was handsome and the woman was enchanting and beautiful. Moreover, they were all in the third realm. Although there were only 3 of them, they were a powerful force. Yi Ching Han turned around and saw the 3 approaching. He waved his hand to signal them not to be hostile. He also looked at them with a smile. Yi Ching Han of the Crazy Manor greets the 3 Taoists of the Chu Shi family. Yi Ching Han bowed and said. The leader of the group, Chu Shi Junxian, smiled faintly. He held the Li Yang sword and cupped his fist. Sect Master Yi, you are one of the few forces that are not hostile towards my Chu Shi lineage. Can we cooperate? Yi Ching Han smiled and said, that is because we are not of the ancient lineage. If Taoist brother Chu Shi is willing to cooperate, Ching Han will naturally welcome you. Supreme Yi stared at the 3 of them. Saliva flowed out of his mouth. He tugged at the corner of Yi Ching Han's clothes and said, Boss, there are beauties and they have treasures on them. Slap. Yi Ching Han casually slapped Supremacy Yi hard on the back of his head. He snorted and said, You can't always stare at beauties and treasures. Even if you stare, can you at least stare at those who don't have an owner? Chu Shi Yao was not angry. Instead, she looked at Supreme Yi with delight. Ha ha ha! Chu Shi Junxian laughed heartily and said, It's okay. Your little spiritual pet is really lovable. Pft, ha 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 ha! At that moment, it was the Kuang sect's turn to laugh. Even Gu Qingyu, who was usually reserved, was holding his stomach and laughing. This was the first time they had heard someone evaluate Supreme Yi like that. Among the hundreds of people, only Huolingtian nodded seriously. He felt that what Chu Shi Junxian said made sense. Supreme Ye's face turned red. He looked at the Kuang sect's people with dissatisfaction and said angrily, You guys are just jealous. The eyes of the world are clear. Look at your jealous expressions. How awkward is everyone's laughter. Yi Ching Han wiped the sweat from his forehead and said helplessly, Yes, how awkward. You'd better stop talking. Otherwise, it will really be awkward later. Chu Shi Junxian and his siblings really did not understand Supreme Yi. Otherwise, they would not have evaluated him like that. Yi Ching Han did not want to waste time there, so he quickly interrupted the laughter and asked, Senior brothers and sisters, are there any places in the Void Ridge that have both offensive and defensive capabilities? We will not participate in the war in the early stages. Let's talk about it in a few thousand years. Chu Shi Junxian lowered her head and thought for a moment before saying, There are many city walls and palaces in the Void Ridge that have not been completely destroyed. The defensive capabilities are very good. However, it is also quite dangerous inside. There are many primordial immortal arrays that have not been erased by time. They are also very lethal. Not many people are willing to go there. Yi Qinghan shrugged and said confidently, "It's okay. I have a way to deal with the primordial immortal arrays and runes." Chapter 26-29. The reason why Yi Qinghan was confident that he could disregard the primordial immortal array and the killing rune was because he had comprehended the killing rune quintessence given to him by the old man in the Jingfan mountain, old man Ouyang Guan. Moreover, he had already passed by the vicinity of the Jingfan mountain on his way here. He had sent desolate Lord Yi and Stan Wuxie to invite Ouyang Guan from the prison. With Chu Shixian leading the way, Yi Qinghan quickly led the group into the Void Ridge. The gravity and dharma of this place didn't change at all because the Void Ridge had left the ancient immortal realm. It was heavy and majestic. There were broken walls everywhere. Half of the ancient city walls had collapsed. Some talisman prohibitions still existed in the world, warning the common people that the primitive era was a glorious era and would never appear in the world again. The group walked in the Void Ridge with reverence. At this time, the main group hadn't arrived yet. Many factions began to occupy some territory without restraint. However, whether they could defend it was another matter. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan left a mark wherever he went, waiting for desolate Lord Yi and Stan Wuxie to meet up. Stan Wuxie and desolate Lord Yi were rushing over with an old man. Most of the prisoners in the prison were sent to Crazed Manor by Jingfan Manor. Only Ouyang Guan was brought to the Void Ridge. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two brothers carried Ouyang Guan as fast as lightning. They were wearing Crazed Manor's uniform. The word crazed was enough to intimidate ordinary factions. Even those in the fourth form didn't dare to stop the two. The two flashed and caught up to the main group 7 or 8 days later. At this moment, Yi Qinghan looked at Ouyang Guan, who was doddering with age and whose face was flushed red. "Yi Qinghan greets Mr. Ouyang. Sorry for making you wait in the prison." Yi Qinghan immediately bowed. Ouyang Guan had white hair and a youthful complexion. It seemed that he had been living well. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "Not bad. That kid from back then has become a big shot. I heard that you've become the heaven-suppressing marquis in Dijintian's place. I'm very happy." Yi Qinghan smiled and immediately got up to hold Ouyang Guan's arm. He said to the group, "Let me introduce Ouyang Guan, my savior. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to reconstruct my body. At least, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. From today onward, he's my grand elder. Those of the same generation should call him martial uncle. Those of the younger generation should call him grandmaster. Do you understand? Martial uncle. Grandmaster. The Crazed Manor and the private army. The King Realm Army. More than a dozen big shots bowed and called him martial uncle. Hundreds of kings called him grandmaster. This kind of honor was rare. Even in a big force, if one's cultivation couldn't keep up, he was destined to be eliminated. The disciple who became a big shot might even be stepped on by the other disciples. Ouyang Guan looked at the Crazed Manor's people with a solemn and respectful expression. Although he was arrogant and unruly, he was also very touched. Good. All of you get up. How can these old bones of mine accept your salutes?" Ouyang Guan sighed. No matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't dare to accept the greetings of so many kings. At this moment, the Biling King beside Lin Wutian said with a smile, "Ouyang Guan, do you still remember me?" Ouyang Guan was stunned. He stared at the Biling King and said in surprise, "Biling King, the inheritor of the ancient path sword technique?" The Biling King nodded and said, "I'm impressed. The arrogant King of Slaughter has someone to rely on for the rest of his life. Congratulations." The King of Slaughter, Ouyang Guan, was much older than the Biling King. However, they were both from the same era. The Biling King and the King of Slaughter were both arrogant and unruly. However, Ouyang was harder to get along with. He was even a little crazy. In order to study the King of Slaughter, he dared to offend and scold anyone. That was why he was locked up by Jingfan Mountain. Ha ha ha, the King of Slaughter, Ouyang laughed. His white hair fluttered in the wind. He was full of energy. He was less crazy and more wise. Zhang Fan talked to me before. I've calmed down a lot over the years. Sigh, I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have been so stubborn. Ouyang was no longer as cold as before. He was like a madman, and his body was no longer dirty. Later on, he didn't stay in the prison. Instead, he was invited by Zhang Fan to join the Dao field. They often talked about Dao, and over the years, his state of mind had improved by leaps and bounds. Yi Qinghan looked at Ouyang change, and felt happy for him from the bottom of his heart. Soon, Yi Qinghan left and introduced the people of the insane sect to Ouyang. Emperor Yi, Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, and the others were all introduced. Ouyang, who had a high cultivation, had a good memory. He quickly remembered all the experts of the insane sect. The people of the insane sect respected this old man from the bottom of their hearts. Even though his cultivation was at the bottom, it didn't stop them from respecting him. A master for a day was a master for life. No matter how high their cultivation was, they had to respect him. Ouyang smiled and said, I have to thank Zhang Fan for all these years. I know that he treated me like this because of you. Karma is the cycle of reincarnation. If there's a cause, there's an effect. I just didn't expect the heavens to bestow me with such great karma. Yi Qinghan supported Ouyang and said with a smile, You should be the one who gave me everything. Chu Shiryao was the second to vomit blood. She was a woman, and she had never seen such a terrifying person. His clothes were ragged, and the battle robe on his body was even scarier than the shroud. His eyes were shriveled, and he looked like a dried corpse. Even his flesh and blood were about to dry up, but he was still alive and moving. If an expert in the fourth form came here, they would probably be furious, let alone a few juniors. Chapter 26:30. He was still alive. At this moment, Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijunxian, and the others were enraged. Lin Wutian and Chu Shiryao couldn't withstand a single glance from the other party. The former's cultivation was weaker, while the latter's mental state was weaker. Boom! The mummified ancient expert stared at Yi Qinghan and the others with his sunken eyes. The sword in his hand let out a clear whistle. His shriveled right hand slowly grasped the sword hilt with killing intent. No one recognized who this ancient powerhouse was, but they were certain that he wasn't from the Yen clan. The ancient expert pulled out his sword. Sword chi pierced through everything. Yen Emperor, you're still alive. Kill. He wanted to fight even if he died. The ancient expert's strength was too terrifying. He pointed his sword at Yi Qinghan and walked with firm steps. The ancient expert's fourth form was definitely comparable to the 5 immortal emperors today. He could probably kill the current fourth form in an instant. Yi Qinghan was enraged. The heaven-suppressing saber in his hand couldn't protect him. Wait, I'm not the Yen Emperor. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and immediately said, Senior, the ancient immortal world was destroyed long ago. Even the ancient immortal world was torn apart. The war back then ended long ago. Yi Qinghan didn't dare to resist. He didn't even dare to fight now. Once he fought, he would have to use his peak strength and use the human Dao Emperor Pagoda. Even if he could suppress this person, his identity would be exposed to countless experts. Who are you if you're not? I'm Su Jiuling, the #1 protector of the Eternal Void Emperor. Yen Emperor, You don't even dare to admit who you are now? Ha ha ha, the #1 emperor of the ancient immortal world. What a joke. The mummified body mocked. Yi Qinghan knew that he had the Yen Emperor's blood in his body. He also had the Yen Emperor's inheritance. It was normal for the mummified body to recognize him. The mummified body's soul was terrifyingly powerful. It was normal for it to be able to see through his bloodline. I can't hide anymore. I'll fight. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's aura changed and suddenly became countless times stronger. His figure rose. Boom! Yi Qinghan took the initiative to step into the primordial battlefield with his saber in hand. He pretended to be strong as he said, "Since you've recognized me, I won't hide it any longer. Fourth form, Void 9 Spirits. Do you still have 10% of your combat strength left?" At this moment, it was the Chu siblings' turn to explode. They looked at Yi Qinghan's back in disbelief. He is Flame Emperor? First Emperor of the ancient era? The three siblings looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. Clear the perimeter of the battlefield. No one is allowed to come within a radius of 3,000 miles. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and said in a deep voice. Whoosh! The mark of the Yen Emperor Pagoda appeared on his forehead. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and held the human Tao Emperor Pagoda in his palm. This battle was going to be his pinnacle battle. It was definitely going to be more dangerous than his battle with the High Priest. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Lin Wutian and the three siblings of Chu Shi retreated quickly and shouted to the people of the Kuang sect, "Clear the perimeter. No one is allowed to come close. Chase them out." At this moment, only the inheritor of the ancient path swordsmanship, the Bailing King, was stunned. He never expected Yi Qinghan to be from the Yen clan and the inheritor of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. However, the Bailing King did not have the orthodox primordial special bloodline. He only cultivated the ancient path swordsmanship. He was not hostile to Yi Qinghan. Otherwise, he would not be stunned. The Bailing King also retreated and began to help the Kuang sect clean up the battlefield. No one was allowed to come close. Fortunately, the noble battle was at the early stage. Those in the fourth form were patrolling the immortal world. Otherwise, they could easily sense the battle here. The Void Ridge was part of the ancient immortal world. The transmission of laws was not sensitive. As long as there was no one in the fourth form within 10,000 miles, no matter what the battle here was, they would not be able to sense the aura of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. Su Jiling's combat power was less than 1% of his peak. Even if he did not die, he could not be compared to the current immortal emperor. At most, he was on par with those in the fourth form. However, it was still very scary. Yi Qinghan stepped into the battle zone and forced Su Jiling to come closer. Su Jiling only saw Yi Qinghan's bloodline but did not see the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. He was forced to retreat by the aura of the Emperor Pagoda. He did not dare to come close and his eyes were full of anger. Outside the perimeter, more than 10 golden immortals of the Kuang sect, along with 3 third-degree cultivators and the Bailing King, drew their swords and rushed to the perimeter. They chased away anyone they saw and killed those who did not retreat. The Kuang sect is handling matters. All deities, retreat. The heroes of the Kuang sect began to rush to the perimeter like a net. The battle flag swayed. The small and medium-sized forces did not dare to act rashly. Moreover, the Kuang sect did not kill them directly. They all retreated quickly. They retreated 3,000 miles and poured down like a flood. Boom! Jiang Jingtian stabbed his spear into a Kanai mountain ridge, intimidating dozens of nobles. He said coldly, "Retreat another 300 miles. Otherwise, it will not be a warning." Retreat. Lin Wutian pointed his sword at a large group. The aura of the ancient path sword technique was extremely sharp. Boom! Chitian Monkey King held the dark iron divine staff in his hand and smashed it into a rotten city wall. The experts who were 3,000 miles away from the battlefield had no choice but to retreat. I'll say it again. The Kuang sect is handling matters. All deities retreat. If you don't blame us for starting the noble battle in advance. Gu Qingyu said coldly. The heroes who were forced to retreat 3,000 miles were furious. They glared at the Kuang sect's troops and were unwilling to retreat. Buzz. Hum. Emperor Yi played the zither. The sound of the zither was bleak and filled with endless murderous intent. The 13 golden immortals of the Kuang sect, the Biling King, and the 3 Chu masters each guarded a direction. The power of the Kuang sect suppressed dozens of forces and made them not dare to act rashly. Hum. The heroes of the Kuang sect drew their swords. 10,000 swords returned to the sect. The sword Dao roared and caused 10,000 swords to greet the emperor. Boom! Stan Wuxie, Desolate Lord Yi, and the others were extremely domineering. They took the initiative to approach the enemy, hoping to force the people who were standing in front of the Kuang sect's troops to retreat and leave Yi Qinghan the largest battlefield. The Kuang sect is too much. A third stage god priest questioned in a deep voice. The Kuang sect has never taken the initiative to bully others. If you are willing to retreat another 300 miles, we will see if you will give face to the Kuang sect on the battlefield in the future. Yan Ao stepped forward calmly. Although he was only at the great circle of the mystic immortal realm, many of the golden immortals of the Kuang sect were inferior to him. His aura was the aura of a leader. Ordinary people could not compare to him. Fiery King was a first-grade marquis. Although his combat power was slightly inferior, his reputation was not inferior to the first- or second-grade golden immortals. So it's Fiery King, a first-grade marquis. This old man has been disrespectful. The third stage god priest immediately gave him a certain amount of respect. If Yan Ao had not led the army to block the Taijiang celestial race's army, who knew how many territories would have been razed to the ground. Therefore, most of the god priests were very grateful to Yan Ao. Give my Kuang mansion some face, and in the future, my Kuang mansion will return with a lot of face. This marquis will remember your origins. Let's see if you are willing to give me, Yan Ao, and give my Kuang mansion some face. Retreat another 300 li. Yan Ao looked down from above. His Yan Jun marquis robe fluttered in the wind. His aura was overwhelming. The experts looked at each other. Yan Ao had already said so. If they did not retreat, it would not be good. Retreat. The third stage god priest immediately waved his hand and led his people to retreat. Since the third stage god priest had retreated, how would the others dare to not retreat? The thousands of people were driven more than 3,000 miles by the Kuang sect. At the rear, Yi Qinghan directly stabbed the heaven-suppressing saber into the mountain ridge behind him. His palms formed a seal, and the human Tao Emperor Pagoda expanded infinitely. The power of the human Tao filled the sky and covered the battlefield. Boom! You should not have recognized my identity. Yi Qinghan's aura was so strong that even the burial cloth was shattered. The blood of the Yen clan surged as if the first immemorial emperor had descended. Human Tao is determined by the heavens. Whoosh, whoosh. Yi Qinghan's figure flashed through the sky. Countless figures broke through the void. In the blink of an eye, more than 30 Yen clan great divine arts were displayed. Yellow sand was swept up and the aura of the human Tao Emperor Pagoda spread for more than 2,000 miles. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.